I'm realizing I've drank almost my entire thing of coffee already. So good
Oops.
luck, everyone. Hi, good morning. Happy Saturday morning cartoons. Yay! Also, welcome back, Doodle Crew. We're here for season 2. We made it. We did it. We came back. We told you we would, and we did. We didn't just go out for cigarettes. We came back. So, yeah, thank you so much for everybody hanging in there for us, watching the interviews, enjoying all of our content in between season 1 and season 2. But enough about that, because we're back and we're here to draw. Yay! So, because I was so excited to get back and have season 2 kick off, I threw out a very rough concept to these lovely artists and then was like, hey, let's go. So here we are. Hey, let's go. Idea for today is we want to talk about season 2 of cartoons. Shock, I know. I'm pretty creative. Don't be intimidated. But what I'd like to talk about a little bit is differences between a season 1 character and a season 2 character. So everybody's going to kind of go around, either use existing characters that they like or want to draw, or make up their own, or some combination of the two. I don't care. I threw that at them very recently. So let's go around, introduce ourselves, talk about the characters we're going to do, and do this thing we haven't done in a while. So throwing it to you first, Mayor Squish. Good morning.
Hello. So I'm Mayor Squish, also known as Nicole, and what I'm going to be doing today is a little bit different. I found a 60s Saturday morning cartoon that only had one season. So I'm going to take one character and see what he may look like in season 2.
That's awesome. I love it. Very, very cool. Excited. All right. And Randall, who are you? What characters are you doing? Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning. I'm Randall, and I am going to be doing, I hope, Jesse from Johnny Quest, specifically The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, which, if you've been following Doodle Crew, you've already seen M do one before. So here I am doing Jesse this time.
Yay! I'm so excited. Yes, and special guest joining us for this kickoff. I'm super, super excited. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. Soapbox Klotz, hi, welcome.
Hi, hello. I'm here. I don't art, but I like to talk. So I clung to M's leg until she said yes, which took about 2 seconds. So
I was going to say, it was a very quick yes. You're like, hey, do you need people for Saturday? I was like, yes, come and play. So yeah, no, we're super excited and it's fun. Just to self-promote, on Crash Test Pilots and their associated media, we've been talking a whole bunch of like cartoons and fun things. So I've been in that brain space and therefore very excited. So if you are curious about more of that, follow them across their social medias and see what they have cooking because it's going to be dope. So, if you don't already know me, you're on my channel, but I'm a swan named Emily. I am going to go an OC character today because I thought, why not make things a lot harder for myself? So that's what I'm doing. But I'm coming off of an amazing trip that I just took to Hawaii. And so I'm feeling the surfing and skateboarding vibes. So I'm going to try and create a fun surfer, skateboarder girl character in her season 1 outfit and then in her season 2 outfit. We'll see how I do. And there we go. So I sketched nothing. I prepped nothing. So yeah.
So in a weird sense of complete irony, the show that Nicole picked, I'm not going to spoil it because I think she's saving it until the big reveal.
Yeah.
But the very first episode of it we watched this morning. Shout out to Amazon Boomerang subscription. No, I'm never going to pay the $5. We're going to get 7 days for free, and that's just it. The whole episode begins with a character doing this weird dance and talking about going to Hawaii. Yeah.
I love that.
Unplanned. Also, they boarded a boat to go to Hawaii from New York.
Oh boy. Don't tell my mother that. I think that's the only way we'll ever get her outside of the continental United States. That's just it. Like, Dad really wants to go to Ireland, and the only way that Mom says she'll go is if she takes a boat. I'm like, Mom, that's a really long trip. Okay. Yep. Okay.
Come on, Mom. Are you a Puritan? Let's go.
Oh,
Just make
no.
sure you bring lots of oranges for her so she doesn't get scurvy.
Yar.
That would be bad.
So we had talked about trying to think of some cartoons that had some pretty drastic changes from season 1 to season 2. And I remember coming up with one, but Em, did you end up running down any more that you that really stood out to you that you remembered being prominent?
Not that I remember, but again, as we talked about a little bit before we went live, I have brainworms and I can't remember anything. So I have one example, but it does not specifically fit the specifications to which I brought to this. So I'm holding that in case you remind me of something else and I think of it. But yeah, like it's a weird thing because I think growing up as a kid, I don't necessarily know that I understood when shows would switch from one season to the next. I mean, like I didn't have Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon for a while. We didn't get cable for a while. So when I was watching stuff, unless there was a drastic change in style or coloring or something like that, I don't think I would have noticed as a kid. Often, I think, because even then I was watching like reruns and stuff like that. So it was a weird, like, seasons didn't mean as much to me as a kid. This sounds really strange to say, but it wasn't something in the forefront of my brain. So, yeah.
Well, now that you say that, though, I agree with that assessment. Like, as a kid, we didn't really have a way to perceive seasons that much.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to, like, I'm racking my brain about all the stuff I watched as a kid. And I think the only things that stood out to me as having clear, deliberate seasons and they were noticeable was Power Rangers, which is not a cartoon.
Yes.
Right.
Nope. That's a really good statement, though, and you're absolutely right.
Because Power Rangers would often shake up their themes and jump to a different Super Sentai season. And so, like, you know, they would have to move on to the next thing. And so, like, you would usually get cast changes around that time. And the tone of the show would change pretty dramatically. Like, the things that the Power Rangers jump into and, you know, the kind of stuff that they fight all change. The style basically changed pretty dramatically.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point because also I watched a lot of Power Rangers growing up. That was my jam. And I remember being disappointed. Obviously, I found out later as an adult, like, some of it was because actors moved on to bigger and better things, and some of it was because actors actually passed away.
Yeah.
One of my personal favorite characters actually passed away. So it was like, oh, as an adult, this is way sadder. I just thought, like, oh, she decided not to be in season 2 or, you know, the next iteration of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but yeah, because I'm thinking all the classics like Rocko's Modern Life and stuff like that. Like, there wasn't a clear overarching storyline necessarily. Like, there was kind of things that connected together, but they were very much one-offs. So it didn't really matter when you watched them. Like with Doug, I think there was a little bit, but even that, like, not enough that I remember.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing about that is, like, animated shows could have like 40 episodes a season or something crazy like that. Like, a lot of them were designed to just be on all the time.
Yeah.
Like, to literally have a new episode almost every week of the year.
Which is insane to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, which is interesting because that format is exactly the reason why Americans were so hesitant to bring over anime. Because they did have that, like, overarching plot.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first ones that got adapted was the infamous Robotech.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like a mind scramble because they took 3 completely unrelated shows, meshed them together in some weird way to try and make it seem like they were connected, just so that they would meet that threshold of, we need at least, what was it, like 60 episodes to be syndicated?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. See, that's interesting because I have a distinct memory of being in elementary school and finding Robotech as a weekly morning rerun during summer break on USA.
Oh.
And I was watching it and I was loving it. Like, I was really enjoying the story and everything. I was like, oh, dude, these robots turn into, you know, jet fighters. This is so cool. And then all of a sudden, like Tuesday, apparently a season ended, and I was like, that was crazy. And then Wednesday, a new season started, and it had completely different characters, and I was like, what is going on?
Uh-huh.
And it completely like blew my mind. I'd never seen anything happen like that before. Like, that just didn't happen in American cartoons. Like, when you watch Looney Tunes, all of the Looney Tunes show up forever.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
anything else like it too. Like, yeah, a couple characters might come and go. Like, I have the X-Men behind me, of course, very famously. Morph, right, is in
Oh yeah.
the beginning of the show and then isn't anymore. But like, that was not the norm really at that point to have. Well, that's the other thing, is it was very uncommon to have characters exit a show in such a way.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's why he came back, because the kiddies liked funny Morph, and they didn't want him to be dead. So
mhm. Yeah.
No, and I think I love that you mentioned, anime coming to the US, because when we were talking about that, the biggest thing I understood in this setting was Sailor Moon, because that was my big, like, if I'm going to watch something, if I'm going to really do all the research I can to find out, what is what, and watch the episodes in order, because especially in their first season, they're building up to something. They're collecting new characters, they're finding their powers, they're doing all of these things, and it's building up to a point, and there is a consecutive story. So
yeah.
I remember that being much more story driven in a season sense than any other cartoon that I was watching at the time. Because even, we talked about Batman the Animated Series a little bit, and while that had things that built on each other, it was definitely still leaning much more towards, you can watch a lot of these out of order, and unless it's a 2-part episode, you're not going to be lost, because they are introducing new characters that episode, and that's as much as you needed to know.
That's kind of like the whole thing about cartoons designed to entertain children, right? Like, you don't necessarily need a narrative through line from episode to episode. It's much more like embraced now, but even then, like, it's friends of the show, Simkin and Dell, when their daughter has watched stuff when I've been around, I've been like, okay, so there's an overall theme going on here, but like, it's very episodic. There's not a serial plot line in any of these kids shows. They just, here's the dilemma of the episode or the adventure of the episode. Let's go on the adventure, wrap things up, move on. But anime has distinct storylines. Even among some of the more juvenile stuff tends to have like at least meta plot movement.
Yeah. Well,
And
even like you're gonna say, like Dragon Ball Z, which I didn't watch as much, but I still watched. But like, I mean, it's a slow plot, but it does have a building plot. You do build up season to season.
I may have told this story before, but I'll never forget watching it on Toonami. And my father turns to me. He's playing a computer game in the living room. He turns to me and he goes, "Why are you watching this crap?" Like, he's like, you've watched 2 episodes and nothing's happened. And I'm like, shut up, Dad. You're not wrong, but I like it. Okay? It's Japanese and cool.
It's unlike anything I've ever seen before. Oh gosh, that's funny. Yeah, because I think that was like, at the time, the people that I was hanging out with were like my video game friends, and they were all watching it. So I was trying to watch it. It was also on that like cartoon block. So you got Dragon Ball Z, you got Sailor Moon, you usually got Batman the Animated Series, all kind of in the same chunk of time. And I would talk to them about it, and I'm just like, honestly, I can watch the episode on Monday and then not watch anything again until Friday and have missed nothing. And they would get very spicy with me about that.
One of the other classic anime traps is the recap that takes up 10 minutes of the 25-minute episode. So you get a like 7-minute recap, you get a 7-minute outro song with credits. So you only get about 12 minutes of actual episode a lot of times, give or take. And so you don't have to watch, episodes 5, 7, and 8, because episode 9 will just catch you up on the 2 things that happened.
I think that was funny. So I didn't get into Naruto as a teen or as a college person. Like I watched some of it, but I really didn't get into it. So I wanted to get into it because I'm a crazy person as an adult. And like, I know it gets really good and I know it has great storytelling, but to tell you what, those first 10 episodes are rough.
Mhm.
Because again, it's like the amount of time spent recapping and just reusing the animation, which I totally get and I totally support. But oh my gosh, from a storytelling standpoint, I'm just like, I'm not sure I'm gonna make it.
Mhm.
Like, we have had 5 episodes and nothing has happened. I can't. So.
I unabashedly admit that Naruto is one of my favorite shows of all time, but I watched all of the original run of 300 episodes. So, for anybody who's not in the know, there's a distinct break after 300 episodes where the show kind of comes back after a time jump, and it's called Naruto Shippuden. And so the first 300 episodes are very much the core characters are children. You know, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, they are young children, like basically not quite middle school age. And then we get a couple year gap when we jump from that to Shippuden where they're teenagers. And the stories mature pretty dramatically. That's not to say the first 300 episodes don't have some great stories. And really touching, deep, like crazy good stuff. It's in there. But this is kind of a like reoccurring issue with anime that is based on manga. They kept catching up to the manga, and so Naruto is not the worst offender, but one of the most famous examples of tons and tons of filler,
Yeah.
like entire seasons of filler, particularly during Shippuden. It's just like it was so frustrating for me. So by the time I jumped into Shippuden, I had to get a watch order guide where it was like, all right, what's the filler that I can skip? Because I don't have the thing about for me with anime, I like to watch it in its original Japanese and I like to read the subs. And that means that I can only do this. Like I can only watch this show.
Right.
So I can't just casually also because the voiceover the American voice work, the English I should say voice work for Naruto in particular is pretty rough. His catchphrase, "Believe it," is
Oh, no.
grating to say. I'm going to nerd out a little bit further. So his catchphrase in English is "believe it," and it's really obnoxious because it's said that way like every time. In Japanese, it's "datebayo," which is basically a nonsense word that just implies that he's like a yokel. Well, you know, like he
Aw.
comes from the sticks. It's
that's such a different like.
it rolls so much differently. It's way less jarring. But yeah, so yeah, Naruto is fantastic, but it does suffer from a lot of filler, and it takes forever to get someplace. Like years and years and years. And I don't. It's crazy. It's crazy that it was so successful over here because it could easily lose people. But I think the quality of the world building, the quality of the character design, and then the heartfelt stories, like the core stories, are actually really remarkable. Some of the best storytelling I've ever seen in the animated medium.
Yeah. Well, I think that was part of why I really wanted to stick with it because I had heard so much. I'm like, no, people love this and they laud it for the storytelling, and I was like, I a fault of my own is I often can't get into anime or manga if I don't like the art.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I had people like I've had a lot of people tell me different ones to watch, and I'm like, I don't think I can sit through it because I can't stand the art. But I liked the Naruto art. So I was like, this should be a win. And I just, yeah. So I think for me, again, it was one of those where I'm like, all right, can I make peace with some weird English voice acting and have it on in the background so that when it's clearly having a plot episode, I can then turn and watch it, and then for the rest of the time, like sit and work on my computer while they're just recapping everything that I watched last episode. But I also wonder too if that's it wasn't originally meant to be binged. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't, you weren't
Yeah.
meant to watch 10 episodes back to back to back. You were watching them a week at a time. And so the recap could be really helpful, even though as a child I remembered things so well. Whereas an adult, I'm like, wait, what happened? It's been 7 days. I remember nothing. So
See, yeah, but that's the other issue, right? Like, because so little happens in every episode, even when they're doing narrative, when they're actually moving the meta plot, so little happens episode to episode sometimes that it's, especially in shonen, like, so,
Yeah.
you know, battle anime that's meant for young boys, you're constantly getting scenes that are reuse of frame over frame over frame of the 2, 3, 5 characters all staring at each other in their battle poses, getting ready to use their big moves. I mean, you know, Dragon Ball Z, it's the famous Kamehameha wave. In Naruto, there's like, you know, they all have their special signature moves and they use them all the time. And sometimes it's done really creatively and really fun. But other times it's just like, all right, dude, all right, Naruto, just whip out your Rasengan. Let's go.
let's go.
Let's go.
See, this is why I liked Ronin Warriors, because they didn't do that as much, and they also gave us like pretty boy Sailor Moon transformations. So that's all I needed.
That's what
That
I was
was-
thinking with the transformations. I was just like, yeah, there were definitely times where I was like, I feel like we showed all 5 Sailor Scouts transforming this time, and we ate up a lot of time. I mean, those transformation sequences are gorgeous, so I'm like, all right. But at the same time,
Exactly.
like, okay. But yeah. It's
I'm like,
shitty.
I get what you're doing here,
But
but I'm
it.
not upset. Like, it's totally fine. You do you. I will sit here and enjoy it.
Well, one of the other really popular shonen anime around the same time as Naruto was Bleach. And
Yeah.
Bleach essentially has magical girl transformations for all the characters. All the Shinigami transform into their Shinigami forms from their regular forms once they start fighting, and then after they beat on each other for a while, usually several episodes, all of a sudden they trigger, you know, their next power up level. You know, they unleash their Shikai, and like it's they actually do like an entire season, and then they're like, oh, by the way, this isn't even our final form. Like, what? Are you kidding me? But it's like one of my favorite parts about that show is like I loved because what drew me to that show was similar to what drew me to Naruto. Great storytelling at the center, like the actual characters interacting with each other, but awesome character design. Like really
Yeah.
cool. We're inspired by this thing, and you know, we have our setting and this is our thing in our world, but then we also take inspiration from the real world. We meld them together. It feels very natural. It's very visually stimulating, and it's just really fun to see what they can do with it. And yeah, it's absolutely magical girl transformations though, and I'm there for it every time. I'm like, yep.
Yep, give it. Also, I love being in chat said, come on, boy, just whip it out already. And then, you're right, and I hate it. Oh, I love it. Also, Abin was saying, don't recommend trying to go back through Yu-Gi-Oh! Really doesn't hold up. That was
Ooh.
one where I wasn't sold on Yu-Gi-Oh! Even at the time. Like that one just, I didn't like the style. So it just didn't quite land for me. So I never really got into it. But yeah.
Yeah, I was never a Yu-Gi-Oh guy. I think it's because I grew up as a Magic player. Back in the late '90s, like there was some serious like click turf war going on between like the kids who liked Magic and the kids who liked Yu-Gi-Oh. So like there wasn't much like cross melding at the time. Oh no, Randall's having issues.
That was a knowing sigh. Just like,
Yep. Yep. I heard Paul turn into a robot, and I'm like, well, here we go. Photoshop's crashing.
Oh no.
I saw your frame go gray, and I was like, oh no.
Oh, Photoshop. It's
Yeah.
only Saturday morning. You can work. It's okay.
It's a very interesting distinction between American animation and Japanese animation. And like though we've kind of talked about this in the past a little bit, right? Like when we were growing up, the stuff coming out of Japan was way different than it is now.
Yes.
And the stuff coming out now is like, a lot of it is like Naruto and Bleach, but like even more homogenized down to like being the same sort of thing kind of over and over again.
Yes.
And, you know, like just, it's very strange to me how it had that industry has like condensed down into being like, we can only do it a couple of ways.
I think
there are
and
some
again, I think
breakouts
it's-
from time to time though.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. And I think that's part of why I get overwhelmed by it, because there's so much out there, but also like so much of it is very similar. I think it's why, while they're not always like my favorite storytelling, I love them as a whole, but sometimes the movies are slow. But I think that's why I gravitated so much to Studio Ghibli, where it was just like, nope, this is something different. And it's a very different storytelling, and obviously movies versus television show, but it was something different. And yeah, and it's weird. And it's funny to teach kids who are in middle school who are gravitating to so much anime now, and they have access to so much of it, and they will throw so many different shows at me like, Miss Emily, do you know this one? I was like, yo, like there's a lot out there, and Miss Emily is not caught up on any of it. But if you want to tell me about it, I will happily listen. But I don't have the same time to get through this as you do.
Yeah, it's particularly rough now when a genre really breaks out. Like, is it? Somebody might correct me here. Isekai.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of those.
Right. So that like the big breakout one over here in the West was Sword Art Online, right? Like that was really the big one that was like caught everybody's attention. We got a ton of merch over here. People watched it like crazy. And then the next thing you know, over the next 5-6 years, there's dozens of them. And they're all a little different, and like it's not that they're bad. I'm not knocking them, because people really like love the different, you know, all the different variations of it. But it's like, okay, but you've sold. It's kind of like the superhero shows. Like, you're probably going to gravitate to the one that you connect with the characters the most, and you're probably not going to find time to watch all of them.
Yep.
But children have limitless time, nearly limitless time. And so they will watch all of them. They'll watch all the ones that their friends are buzzing about, just like we did when, you know, we had much less supply back then, but
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking that as you're talking about it, and I'm Randall specifically because he and I have talked about this, but anything Gundam. Like, Gundam had so many different iterations, and I felt like I was finally I was like, yeah, Gundam Wing's my thing. And then like 8th MS Team came out, and then there was just regular Gundam and not just Gundam Wing, and then there was a movie, and I'm just like, there's so much Gundam. But like Gundam Wing was my first, and that's the one that I still gravitate the most to, because it's the one I watched first, it's the one I connected with, and I didn't have the bandwidth to take in the rest of the extended Gundam universe.
And it gets really wonky with Gundam because some of it is considered canonical to like Wing, and some of it's not.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's a complete reset. Like, it's the similar concepts at play, but it's none of the same factions. Like, one of my personal favorites, and one of the only ones I've watched the bulk of, is I don't know, how do people colloquially refer to it? It's 00 though, is the one that I've watched the most of.
Okay.
And it's kind of a weird storyline, because like the heroes, if you will, are terrorists. They have super special Gundams that are more powerful than all the other mobile suits out there, because they have this technology that nobody else seems to have access to. But they're essentially terrorists. They go around the planet like being like, war is murder and it's bad, so we're going to destroy everything here. And it's like, it's a very interesting perspective. And like, the main character is a child of war, like he was a child soldier. It's very, very different than some of the other stuff.
But I mean, that's like the meme that's going around that you might have seen of Gundam Wing. And they're all sitting in a classroom like it's one of those promo pieces of art. And then the text above it says, when you realize that this show you loved as a kid was about 4 terrorists.
Yeah. It's true, though.
Also, the Gundam shows are a lot darker than I think people realize.
They are so dark. like watching them as a kid, I missed so much of what actually was going on in Gundam, and like rewatching some of it as an adult, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is yikes.
You're like, wow, there was like a political subplot, and that just like
Mhm.
completely went over my head as a kid.
Yeah, like I feel like it'd be very much like little me trying to watch The West Wing when it was on TV and my mom watching it. I'm just like, wait, it's all about politics? That's it? Like this is, and now I watched it as an adult. I was like, oh, well, this is fascinating and these issues and blah, 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 blah. But as a kid, I'm just like, nope. And I, conveniently just blocked out like anytime they would go on big like political rants in Gundam. I'm like, I don't know, stuff blows up. What
Yeah.
happened? I blacked out. I don't remember anything.
Wait, she's possessed, but she's doing things with the Senate. I don't know what's happening.
I don't know. Thank goodness I had Star Wars, the prequels, come out so soon after that so that I could really get invested in some galactic politics. That's
Yep.
Thank you, Star Wars. Thank you. I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Because that is what drew people to the Star Wars franchise.
Yep.
That's what I was missing.
Senate meetings.
It just makes me think of Red Letter Media, if anybody has watched any of those reviews.
I'm
You.
familiar with them. I haven't watched them,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, it's like, I love the points that they make, but the format can be a little unsettling for people because he has that whole like serial killer subplot that's awkwardly woven into it.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Oh, Star Wars.
So speaking of things that are way, way above a child's maturity level or immaturity level, one of the things that I brought up to Em when she raised the idea of like trying to figure out stuff that changed drastically was Ren and Stimpy, which was pretty subversive when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
So I had looked into it after we talked about it, and what's interesting about it is the showrunner, the original creator and showrunner, he was pushed out after season 1. He kept having recurring conflicts with the studio, and he basically, like by the end of that first season, like they were bargaining, like let's do a really out there and abstract episode, and then we'll do like a just warm, fuzzy, lighthearted one, and yeah, we'll just trade off like that, and everything will be okay. And they eventually just pushed him out of the picture entirely.
Cut to the narrator. Everything was not okay.
Everything was not okay. Steve says, I was definitely not allowed to watch Ren and Stimpy as a kid. I did anyways.
Oh,
So-
I was super not allowed to watch it, and I definitely did it.
Yeah, the funny thing was, back when that was on in the 90s, my mom used to babysit this kid with really religious grandparents.
Oh boy.
And so the grandparents would like bring him over and be like, oh, well, what are you watching? And I said, oh, it's Ren and Stimpy. And they're like, okay, well, we don't allow him to watch The Simpsons, though. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell you that this is way worse than The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons either. But yeah, Ren and Stimpy, real dark at times, like real subversive. And I think it's funny because I was peripherally aware of Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound so silly, but it's because, again, I grew up at the firehouse and a lot of the firefighters really liked Beavis and Butthead. Shock to no one. So, like, I understood that as this is a funny thing that makes people laugh, and I will, understand it from a certain point, but not because I actually watched it or consumed it. But Ren and Stimpy was that very, like, it was also gross. Like, it was gross to me as a kid. And because I think at the time when I was coming into contact with, I was right in that weird intersection of, like, being a super, like, all things pink, My Little Pony little kid to the eating bugs in the mud little kid. And I was in that next, like, weird transition thing of what was I going to be next. So I wasn't there for the gross. Like, I just didn't, I was like, wait, like, there's toe lint and it's all, like, highly rendered.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch that. Like, give me some Disney princess, please. Thank you.
So I used to, a couple weekends a month, I would spend it with my grandmother and my aunt who lived with her. And they were like the cool side of my family. Like they were on my mom's side. They were stoners, and so my aunt would sit there. She was in her 20s at the time. I was a little kid, and we would watch Ren and Stimpy, and she'd be stoned off her gourd, just giggling along at how absurd it is. But my grandmother on my mom's side, bless her heart, she took me to see Beavis and Butthead Do America in
Oh my
theaters
God.
because I wanted to see it. And afterwards, she was just like, I don't know what we just watched, but did you have a good time? And I was like, yes! I had so much fun. So Beavis and Butthead, for me, I remember distinctly the first time I saw it, and I think it was right around when it first came out. We were spending the holidays, like one of the holidays, maybe Thanksgiving or Christmas, at my uncle's house, and he had two boys who were about, I'd say they were about just shy of a decade older than me. So they were in their teens when I was pretty young.
Okay.
And so they were watching it because they had TVs in their room that they could play Nintendo on. And they were watching MTV, and I watched it with them. We watched a couple episodes, and they were laughing hard. I was laughing at the absurdity of it. And I remember going home and going to my stepmom being like, I want to watch more Beavis and Butthead. And she was like, oh, no. I heard enough of that show to know that you're not going to watch that at home. And I was like, but it was so good. And she's like, well, I hope you enjoyed it because you're never going to watch it again.
Oh no. Oh.
So I would only get to see it like occasionally when I was like at a friend's house or something where we could get away with it. But it was again, like Ren and Stimpy, it was gross a lot of times. Like
Yeah.
the real leaning hard into the gross out stuff and just really offensive in so many ways. But it, for a kid that like liked that stuff, it was my jam, my toe jam.
And I think it's funny because it clearly struck like a chord with a lot of people. Like that, it was huge enough that, at a time when I feel like there wasn't a ton of merchandising happening for cartoons, like there was merch for it that I would see, and I was like, wait, I don't understand. And
if you really think about it, like Ren and Stimpy and Beavis and Butthead absolutely paved the way for South Park. And then when South Park hit, cartoons were never the same.
Yeah. Nope, I agree.
Bean says, I was born too late for Beavis and Butthead and Ren and Stimpy and have only seen clips and stuff, and it never drew me in at all. And my parents were against me watching Power Rangers and stuff.
Oh.
Well, so that's the thing. Like, Ren and Stimpy and Beavis and Butthead, they speak to the counterculture movement in youth culture at the time. This was the grunge era. This was the height of MTV, like probably at its best when grunge and alternative music and hip hop were all being like broadcast through MTV at the same time. So it was really like an excellent like snapshot of youth culture of the era. And it was just, that's what people wanted. They wanted something that broke the mold and did something new and challenged the paradigm. And they did it. Because there was nothing else like them at the time.
And there's still part of me that is amazed that a lot of those cartoons were actually able to make it to like public broadcasting, like make it on TV, because again, there wasn't a way you could just take it to the internet and get a following that way. Like you had to make it on TV or it wasn't gonna be seen. And like, except for like black market VHSs and sharing that, like not quite the same market saturation. So yeah, I think it's funny to me because I can't imagine being a teenager at that time. Like when all that stuff was happening in the 90s, like at that point I was young. Like I was still in an elementary school. So it was, not only was it much above what I was allowed to watch, it was much above where I was mentally. So it was so.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Looks like we lost Emily. That's not good.
That's not good at all.
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I just went to switch screens, but hi, I'm back.
Hi, welcome back.
Sorry.
It scared me because I was like, wait, but last time Paul turned into a robot. So what does this mean?
What's happening now?
My transformation is complete. And now so is M's.
No.
Our robot face hugger is flying over the Atlantic right now. Prepare yourself, Nicole.
Okay, thank you.
One of us. One of
Well, now
us.
that's-
Oh gosh. That's funny.
Bean said Rutro in chat, but I don't know if we're still streaming or not.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Okay. I only have chat open, so
let's check. Let's see if we're still here. It says we're still live. Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're still there. Drop a note in chat if you can still see and hear us, or if Emily broke it.
also shout out to Jesse Betts for 7 months with Prime.
Yeah! Thank you so much, Jesse Betts.
Yes, definitely a solar flare bean.
Oh, yeah. And sharks chewing on the internet cables. That's what we blame it on whenever In Edition has trouble. It's always them internet sharks. Also, can we take a moment to say it's been almost 50 minutes and I am still working on my character, so things are going well. Perhaps I should have prepped beforehand. Nah.
You mean like me, an hour before the stream started, being like, "What am I doing?"
Nicole did her homework and she figured out what she wanted to do last night.
Yeah.
See, she
I
is
did
smarter
not do
than
any
us.
sketching.
I looked at some Pinterest pictures. Does that count?
That's just scrolling, Em. Come on.
I
It's not-
know. I know.
So I'm laughing about Bean saying that his parents were against him watching Power Rangers and stuff because I distinctly remember. Do you guys remember Three Ninjas?
Oh yeah.
I loved Three Ninjas.
So I remember one spring in elementary school, they started showing us that during recess because it had rained a lot, and so it was too wet outside on the playground and stuff to go out.
Yep.
And so I remember we watched it like one day and maybe 2 days, and then all of a sudden they like put something else in. We were like, whoa, we didn't finish our movie. And they're like, yeah, no, but you're not watching that anymore. And it's because what do little kids do when they watch a show about, ninjas and karate and kung fu?
They beat the snot out of each other.
Yes, they beat the living crap out of each other. And yeah, so I totally understood why like some parents were not okay with like Power Rangers and stuff. But dude, honestly, I think I talked about this one of the last times I was on with you guys, but I will never forget seeing the commercial like a few months before Power Rangers came out when they were advertising it on Fox ahead of time. And just seeing them be like, so Power Rangers, and they showed the the ninjas and their costumes, and I was like, all right, this is cool. Like, little like 7-8-year-old me is like, all right, I'm excited.
All right, I'm vibing.
And then they showed the robot dinosaurs, and being a kid who grew up loving dinosaurs and robots, and especially robot dinosaurs, I lost my mind. It was like the greatest thing that had ever been created, in my opinion. I was obsessed with ninjas because I grew up on Ninja Turtles. I was obsessed with robots and obsessed with dinosaurs. This was the greatest thing that had ever been made. Except it was on Fox, and at the time I didn't get Fox at my house because I lived in the country.
Yep.
So I could only watch it at my friend's house,
Hi.
which was really sad. I made up for it a couple years ago by watching a few episodes with McFall's youngest son
Oh.
at Dragon Con. My first Dragon Con, we stayed at McFall's place. And so I would wake up before everybody else and I would hang out with Ryland and just watch like Power Rangers or whatever else he wanted to watch. And,
I love that so much.
sitting there eating our Cheerios. Yeah, Bean, I remember that. Oh, but Bean's like, it was more that my parents were anti-violence. It's interesting when you think about how, at least for our generation, I feel like children's entertainment was very violence-focused.
Yeah. I feel like,
Everything was about conflict.
well, and too, like, it came off of a lot of, like, watch a lot of 80s movies, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of violence in those, but it was weird because it never, I don't want to say it didn't strike me as violence, but, like, I feel like I'm tiptoeing into the, like, playing violent video games didn't make me violent, but I was like, like watching that and watching explosions and stuff, I was like, no, this is just cool. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want to then go and blow stuff up. I just enjoy watching it because it's entertainment. Hi. Yeah. She did it too, apparently.
Mhm.
Hey, I need to draw. I know.
No, mother. She's the
well.
cutest.
She really is. She's being quite adorable. But I'm not making very much progress as it is, so I need you to help me out so I can get my art done. Yeah. I just remember being so excited, again, coming back to Power Rangers, like that there was a girl Power Ranger, but she didn't wear pink. Like there was obviously one who did wear pink, but there was another one. And I was like, oh, girls who kick butt? This is exciting. And then finding out that I was like, oh, when they like switched over to the actual like them in their power suits, it's because that was not a girl in that suit. I'm like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
Yeah, the whole Power Rangers thing is so wild. They're
Yeah, I it's wild to me that there are so many people that, like, still obsessed with it. Like Hebe Buffet, who is a guest of Doodle Crew sometimes, has
Yeah.
so many figures and like continues to watch the new seasons and stuff. And I just don't know how you can keep up with it.
Yeah, I think I watched maybe two iterations, we'll say, because I don't remember how many quote unquote seasons like the OG cast that I fell in love with had. But like after them, I think I only watched like one more set of humans and then I didn't continue. So, hi.
so if I recall correctly, the original cast had 2 seasons, I believe.
Okay.
So okay, I went back and watched this a few years ago. First of all, there's a lot more episodes of Power Rangers than you think.
Oh yeah.
There are a lot of episodes. But if I remember the story arc, it's the first season. About halfway through the first season, we get introduced to Tommy, which is a Green Ranger, and then
Best Ranger.
yeah, Best Ranger. He starts off as a villain, and
Okay,
then
yep.
they win him over. They save him basically, and if I remember correctly, I can't remember if he becomes the White Ranger before the movie or
Yes.
after.
I think it's before.
Right. But then the movie is, I think that was after season 2 because the movie is when they transition to new Zords.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Because the old ones are destroyed. And yeah, Bean asks what was it? Yellow Ranger and Pink Ranger were girls.
Yes.
In the American version, Yellow Ranger and Pink Ranger are Trini and Kimberly, but in the original Japanese Super Sentai, the Yellow Ranger is actually a boy. If I recall correctly.
Yeah. Yep. And at that time, they were still using. So anything where the Power Rangers were in their quote unquote human form was the actual American actors. But the majority of it, once they're in their Power Ranger form, is all footage from the Japanese like version. So it wasn't even them. It was, looking back now, it's so weird. But I'm just like, as a kid, I'm like, I don't care. I noticed nothing. I am here for this.
My understanding is it's still done that way.
Okay.
So I believe all the production for Power Rangers now is done in New Zealand, if I am correct. It's done in Oceania. It's either Australia or New Zealand, and because a lot of the actors are New Zealand and Australian actors now.
Okay.
But yeah, I think they just film the quote unquote Western narrative with all of their actors, and they still continue to use all the action stuff from Super Sentai. Because Super Sentai still goes. Like it has not stopped.
That's crazy to me.
I think it was the Toys That Made Us has an episode about the Power Ranger toys.
Oh,
where
I would watch the crap out of that.
You should
Oh,
check it
yeah.
out on Netflix because they talk a bit about the whole Saban's deal to set it all up and how the show, like, because the toys come about because of the show and how it was such like a crazy sweetheart deal that never should have worked, and it's crazy. It's a crazy story. If I recall correctly, like somebody who worked for Mattel had tried to convince Mattel to do it before. It was a whole thing,
Okay.
It's been a little while since I watched it, but I remember like I think the gist of it was like an executive, a female executive was at this one company. She was really pushing hard to get it to work out. It didn't work out, and then she changed companies, and then it came to her desk again at the other company, and she's like, I was trying to get this done for like 10 years over at the old company. And so, yeah, it's just a crazy sweetheart deal that ended up working out. And yeah, that's history now. It's been 30 years of Super Sentai being its own thing and then getting remolded into Power Rangers.
That's so cool. Also, I just want to take a moment because as we were talking about this, like, obviously, Nicole, you're familiar with this because it's in the cultural zeitgeist, but I just imagine, like, as we say all of these things, you're like, yeah, and you got the Sentai and you got this and everything. And I was like, this must just sound like we are talking the most insane gibberish. We're just like, yeah, okay, they're doing that thing again. And you're just like, cool, those are sounds. Those are,
You know what? It's always nice when you guys talk about like Saturday morning cartoons or anything like that because I can treat it like a podcast. Because you guys know that I have no idea about this stuff, so I'm just like, I'm good. I'm good. I could just paint, be zen.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I suppose I didn't really lay the foundation. For anybody who didn't know, Super Sentai is a long-running series in Japan that is basically the same concept as Power Rangers, but Power Rangers is using their action footage for their ninjas and power suits, and then also all of their robots and Zords, whatever you want to call them, fighting monsters. But they change the narrative and just make a distinctly Western narrative for Western audiences. And so it's like, it's reusing all the footage from the show. So it keeps their production costs down. It's a wild thing. It's like one of the craziest things that's ever been done. And it's almost crazier to me that it's not done more often.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Just-
feel like that's kind of on its own in that category.
But like Super Sentai gets so wild because one of my favorite Super Sentai seasons that I haven't watched it, but I love the concept. They turn into trains. Like their Zords are trains.
No.
Basically anything that's popular with children, it's been done for Super Sentai, and it works in Japan because they just sell the toys. You know, like the fact that the Super Sentai Rangers turn into like summon trains and jump inside them works.
Sure.
And it doesn't hit the same over here.
I was gonna say because they've got like super cool bullet trains, and
Yep.
all I can imagine is our ones turning into Thomas the Tank Engine. That's all I can picture. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Future Doodle Crew prompt right there. Thomas the Tank Engine and his friends as Power Rangers.
I'm here for that. That would be.
I just want a Megazord that is Thomas the Tank Engine's face.
She's got his little face just in the center.
Yep,
Just
in
like,
the chest.
oh, Thomas the Zord Engine. Yes. Oh, God, it's so good. Okay. I'm good. That one got me. I feel like that's one of those, obviously very different culture, but in such a strange iteration of that because cross-country travel in America is so different than cross-country travel like almost anywhere else, especially Japan. And so like if you said train, like again, my vision of train because of what I've grown up exposed to is very, very different. And oh, trains.
So discussing the whole Power Ranger thing, it's worth noting that at least for boys focused entertainment in the 70s and 80s, almost everything made for boys was, we want to make a toy line, now we need a cartoon to sell our toys. The Toys That Made Us also speaks about that at length during the like G.I. Joe and He-Man episodes.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, this whole era, like, you wouldn't think that the Toys That Made Us show would talk about the cartoons very much, but it does talk about it enough so like you see the connection. But He-Man and G.I. Joe and like a lot of other toys like that, basically it was like they designed a whole bunch of toys or they licensed toys from Japan and then they had to make shows to match. And the shows had to just drive sales. That was the whole thing. The stories are garbage. It's not about stories. It's about selling toys.
Hey,
Waiting
speaking
for the
of-
angry reactions in the chat from people who are like, "Hey, they had really good stories."
Well, it's like fans of Voltron. They'll talk about the original Voltron cartoon. I'm like, the original Voltron cartoon was awful, but the remake on Netflix was a lot of fun because it actually has plot and good plot and good actors, good voice actors. Hebe Buffet is in chat.
Funny, because we were just talking about you. We did a
And-
whole bit on Power Rangers.
And says, I came in at a good time. You did. We're talking all things, I guess, like 80s and 90s, mostly 90s so far. We were talking about Power Rangers for like a half an hour. And Randall said you're like the biggest Power Rangers fan, so he outed you. Told us all about your action figures and they're miniatures, Marie. I mean, uh-oh. Was Thundercats made like that? I don't remember. Let me look it up.
Yeah, that one I don't specifically remember because I feel like that was right in the Thundercats, He-Man, She-Ra whole bit, but also like Mighty Max, like all of that gets kind of the time frame of it all gets truncated in my brain because I remember it as a kid, but I think it was actually multiple years apart that all that was happening. Oh my gosh, the comment from Hebe Buffet, the fact that trains don't sell, and that's why they didn't adapt a recent season. We were just talking about trains.
I was just talking about the train season.
Oh god. Oh, I love it so much.
So it looks like Thundercats is Rankin and Bass. It doesn't seem like it was toy focused at first. Oh, and they did some comics too in the 80s. And then again later on. So they did several comic series with Marvel, and then they also did Wildstorm, which is an imprint of DC. Oh, and this is interesting because Thundercats is owned by Warner Brothers, and they did the Marvel Comics run before Disney owned Marvel, and so now it would seem like that's one of those limbo things that like they probably wouldn't ever want to reference.
Oh, okay.
Bean says, I feel like Thundercats didn't really have a toy line that the show was made for. Yeah, there were toys, but because I had some. And then they remade Thundercats a while back, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then like they've done, I know we've talked about this before, and I need to actually do the research so that when I speak about this, I make sense. But they had the reboot that I really liked the design of because it was very a la Studio Mirror, which is the new Voltron and all of that style. And then they did the second like reboot that looked like Adventure Time style. And like, I can't remember, is that one still going or like that was a whole weird thing.
That one, isn't it called like Thundercats Roar?
I think so, yeah.
Mm.
Roar. Oh, thank you, Hebe Buffet. Thank you for the sub. Also just need to take a moment that I'm so happy to be back talking about cartoons. Like, I'm enjoying this so much.
I really love talking about like 80s and 90s cartoons and toy culture because it was just such a wild time.
It really, really was. And, yeah.
And I really can't suggest more highly the Toys That Made Us series on Netflix. They did a spin-off after the fact. They did the Movies That Made Us, and there's 2 seasons of that. That's also quite good. But the Toys That Made Us is so fascinating. Like, even episodes that you don't think would be good, like the Barbie episode doesn't really appeal to, like, I didn't grow up playing with Barbies unless I was, like, at a babysitter's and they had a daughter, and I played with the daughter's Barbies, which usually meant checking out Barbie's anatomy because I was curious. But the women that worked at Mattel are boss ladies, and they deserve incredible praise and attention because they were absolutely slaying the toy industry for a long time and just like making power moves like crazy. So, but all of it is really fascinating because like sometimes you would probably look at that stuff and wonder like, where does the inspiration come from? Like, do you make the toys first? Do you make the shows first? Sometimes it's a little bit of both, but a lot of times it was like the toy makers would just create the most crazy character concepts they could, and then the people making the shows had to be like, okay,
Which
we will.
from a like design production place, like what a way to do like reverse engineering. Like again, obviously they're still spending time developing a character, and if you're going to make a toy of it, you have to have a full 360 of it. So like you have that to give to the animators, but I can't imagine that from a writer's standpoint where you're like, all right, now here's this very unique, very weird character. Go. Like, okay. Wow.
And there were some conflicts around that stuff, like in particular with like He-Man. So a modeler would develop a figure idea, and they would design something that they could make in plastic, right? And then it would get handed off to the art team for the cartoon, and then there would have to be a writer that would have to write the show or write any comics, anything that tied in, and they would have to develop plot off of those characters. And it made conflict because sometimes the writers didn't write characters the way the person who designed the character envisioned them, and vice versa, and it just got really wild and weird, and there's some bad blood between some of the original creatives involved in like He-Man and G.I. Joe and stuff. It's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the comics industry with the golden age greats, like how much conflict there was between the creatives who came up with the stuff.
I'm very happy for shows like The Toys That Made Us, because I feel like anything that was happening behind the scenes wasn't ever made aware. Like, unless you were personally experiencing that wasn't information that was publicly accessible. Like, you can learn about that through the toys themselves or through the show. So I'm happy that they're preserving, like, oh no, this is actually what was going on behind the scenes that you had no idea about.
Oh, that would absolutely be me. If I worked in one of those studios and they're like, so could you tell us a little bit about what it was like? And I'm like, oh, honey, yes. Sit down. We've got story time a-coming. I'd be the one they're like, yes, use all of his interview segments in this documentary.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Well, so that's the interesting thing about the time we live in, because of streaming services and stuff like YouTube, we're in a unique period where documentarians can actually document this stuff before these people leave us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, particularly for like the 70s and 80s, like a lot of the people who were making big decisions back then aren't around anymore for various reasons.
Yeah.
Or they're just not going to talk, you know? But like, it's been that perfect amount of time, and the internet is the way it is in such a way that has enabled this kind of stuff to get made and have an audience pretty much no matter what. And it's truly incredible. Like, it's so awesome to watch a show like The Toys That Made Us and see the decisions that were happening and the crazy business deals that were happening behind closed doors.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That shaped our childhoods, like, in a huge way. Like, we couldn't have understood it at the time, but like, the decisions these people were making were like, all right, so these are the toys we're going to offer. This is the show we're going to make. This is what's going to entertain an entire generation of children for a long time. And it's going to shape their worldview one way or another.
My favorite piece of drama from that period is the rivalry that came about between Hasbro and Mattel with Barbie trying to cash in on the success of Gem and the Holograms by creating the Rocker Barbie line.
Yep.
Oh, God. Oh, Barbie.
Adele says we need a good Rainbow Bright reboot.
Yeah.
There was one. I didn't know that. So clearly they didn't do a good job marketing it, but it was like 10 years ago. There was a reboot.
I think we've talked about this again. These are things where I'm like, I feel like we've mentioned this on Doodle Crew episodes, and I always mean to like go and run down this stuff, and then I forget and never do. But yeah, it was one of those where I was like, wait, how did I miss this? This is a thing I loved as a kid.
Yeah. I'm still bitter about the cancellation of that Thundercats reboot, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that style so much. Like, if you, again, it's so weird as an adult looking at this, and I know I mentioned the new Voltron, like, there's a very specific style that little Emily and adult Emily really loves, and that's it. Like, if you want to build the perfect show for me, that's the style that I want. And anytime that doesn't continue, and I see then a eruption of shows who all have a look like Big Mouth, and that type of stuff, and there's like 10 of them, and I'm like, that's cool. I'm sure they're great. I don't want more of that.
Yeah.
That's not what I want more of.
Oh,
Stop.
Big Mouth's a great show, though.
I need to try and find a way to watch it. Like, genuinely. I know that sounds snarky, but it, again, as I mentioned earlier, like, it's the I don't like that style. I just don't. Bob's Burgers is about the closest I get, and that one won me over because it's just such great storytelling and writing.
Yeah.
But I have to get there with Big Mouth, and I'm not there yet.
So, I've only watched like 2 seasons of Big Mouth, but I would say that it's a lot like Bob's Burgers in the you don't show up for the art style, and you might be turned off by how like out there it is, because the subject matter is, it leans into like, it's all about puberty, basically. All these teenagers going through puberty. So it's like leaning into weird sex stuff and everything in like, hormones and everything, like going through puberty, the whole thing.
Not a thing I want to experience again as an adult.
But it's actually remarkably heartwarming at times because it's very genuine. Like, it's funny, it's absurd, it's out there, but there's heart there. Like, there's real stories being told, and you're like, holy crap, they're doing such a great job of like capturing the angst of, your teen years, but also the confusion and just the listlessness.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
I just have to like point out in the chat something that is my absolute favorite thing. The robot chicken strawberry shortcake skits that they used to do.
Oh my goodness.
Like,
I don't know if I remember those.
it was just like so bizarre. And I mean, there was so much on Robot Chicken that it's like, this is dumb, but I like it for how dumb it is.
Yeah. Yeah, for some reason, like, the way that they balanced that, I enjoyed more than many of the other shows that were like, oh, this is dumb. And that's
like,
it.
there was that whole skit that they did. I don't know if you remember, there was a Sailor Moon one.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. So in that one, they it's like, Sailor Moon, you need to transform, the enemy's attacking, and she's transforming, and as she's like doing the whole thing, she's spinning around and like making very sexual noises.
Oh, no.
And then it cuts to the villain, and they have a massive erection, and it's just like, oh god, I'm so sorry. Oh Jesus.
It's not wrong, but my childhood. Oh gosh.
It's like, I'm just, do you want to fight? Because I think I'm just gonna go now.
Well, calling back to Naruto, one of the running gags on that is very early on he learns a thing called sexy jutsu, where
yeah.
he turns into a voluptuous blonde woman. And so in anime, when they want to depict inappropriate arousal in adults, they always give them a nosebleed. And so there's this like one servant to one of the characters that is always around. He's like kind of an adult. He doesn't want to be there. And then sexy jutsu happens, and just like torrents of blood coming out of his nostrils.
Oh gosh.
But it's fan service gets pretty wild sometimes.
Also, just I love, and I highlighted it, but Dell's comment in the chat, anime is weird. Yeah, it's I think it also, as we talked about, obviously cultural differences, but the way that puberty and sexual interest and even just sex as a concept is handled between what I would say more puritanical bits on the Western animation side and just what is quote unquote culturally appropriate is very, very different. So again, so much of the stuff that they're bringing over to the West in the Toonami times, like, is getting censored to the max because they're like, we can't show this on television. Why would you do that?
But that's like the other thing is all right, so I'm going to get into some sketchy territory for just a bit here. But when you talk about hentai, which is the result of like pretty puritanical censorship policy in Japan, like hentai, like people look at hentai, they're like, why is hentai so weird? Like why tentacles and all this other stuff? And it's basically because one, a sexually repressed society, but two, things to get around censorship. Tentacles in hentai are allowed because they're phallic to a point, but they don't immediately trip the censorship standards, if you catch my drift. And so like they start pushing boundaries, and the next thing you know, like there's the black market for like the really extreme stuff, and then there's of course the like just adult only type stuff. It gets really wild, and that's all because of just governmental restrictions and like what they could get away with and how they had to, because it affects some flesh and blood stuff. I'm trying not to use the P word, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. So like, because there are limitations on that stuff, the animated stuff is what people turn to be titillated, and it gets weird. It gets really weird.
It's so weird.
So for those of you playing Doodle Crew Bingo at home, go ahead and mark off the tentacle square.
Yeah. Hibisco sketchy territory. This is an art stream.
Ew. Oh gosh, yeah, and follow us for our next Doodle Crew episode where we let Paul say all the words. Oh goodness, that's too funny. Yeah, it is amazing to me how creative people can be to get around censorship. Like there's one of those where it's like, whether I enjoy the content they produce or not, like there's an admiration to the like, oh wow, okay, that's thinking outside of the box for sure.
Right. Like 90s Animaniacs.
Oh yeah. Oh, Animaniacs was so irreverent, and now as an adult, I'm like, I am so here for all of this.
Yeah, it's interesting to go back to look at some of that subversive, like just barely skating under the radar stuff from the 90s, where like you're like, oh wow, this show is full of jokes for the adults that have to suffer through this, and not suffer really, they're enjoying it because it's genuinely funny. It's a really like, but that goes all the way back. That legacy goes back to like OG Looney Tunes, like the early stuff, the first stuff done in color is like, it's full of innuendo and adult jokes. A lot of it hasn't aged very well, but it's there.
Yep.
I mean, I think
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think and this is one of those where I'm realizing like things were better back in my day. Like I'm feeling that position and I don't like it, but it's I am so now, as someone who is not a writer at all, I will say that I am so much more impressed with like the Looney Tunes and the Animaniacs writing, because they were doing that to skate under the censors, and I felt like it really pushed them to be remarkably creative in the jokes and how they did it. And I feel like as censorship has laxed on some of it and you can get away with a lot more on regular television, like it's not that the jokes aren't good, it's just they're more obvious. And I don't know if that's just because I'm an adult now or what, but like there's part of me that's like, oh, but it was so good when it was like, we're being so sneaky about this. And I have a soft spot for that because I like that cleverness. I like that pushing of innuendo and wordplay, and it just
So I guess like I would say like the early to mid 90s was kind of defined by a lot of that sneaky stuff. But then by the late 90s, you started getting like not a cartoon, but somebody like Tom Green who was like, let me take a sledgehammer to your expectations.
Yeah.
Let me confront you as violently as possible with the stuff I'm going to do. And it's crazy how like it shakes things up.
Yep.
I don't know that I would enjoy a lot of the stuff I watched when I was like late teens, early 20s anymore and be like, oh yeah, this is fun. I think I'd be like, this is really dumb. But it did change what we saw on broadcast television.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It paved the way for some good stuff and for some bad stuff. But I think there's a lot of content that gets made today that could never have happened if not for people really pushing the boundaries back then.
100%. Yeah.
Bean says, gotta take me to dinner first before we make some innuendos. Dell says, Japanese censors used to have to take razor blades and hand scratch out every pubic hair out of foreign prawn before it could come into the country.
Oh my goodness.
Oh boy. What did you do today, honey? I deleted a whole bunch of dicks.
Yep. Oh, that's weird. Okay.
Dell says, I'm going to reference Bluey, which Paul hates. To be fair, I don't hate Bluey. I hate the cult of Bluey.
Fair.
No, I legit hate Bluey. I'm just going to put that out there. It is not meant for adults. If you're an adult watching it, do not talk to me.
I've been like, if you got kids and it's something that you don't have to suffer through, more power to you. But I'm not joining the cult. I don't have children. She says there's an episode, Bob Bilby, where they put away all their electronics and Bandit, the dad, gets out his old Polaroid camera to document their day. Chili, the mom, says, "Are you ready, Bob?" in a sultry way. And Bandit reflexively sets off the Polaroid camera, which just kills me every time. That's pretty good.
Oh, I enjoy it.
Okay, I'll give them that. That's good. It's just the way that they talk on that show. Ugh. It infuriates me. I cannot stand it.
I've never actually watched any of it. I've heard it in the other room when I was visiting with Sim and Delphine. Go on, Ann. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was going to say, is it like Caillou level of rage? Because Caillou level of rage is like, that's pretty much my peak. Like, that's where if you want me to really explode and be mad about stuff, it's Caillou. Because I wanted such bad things for that child. I was like, I'm not a violent person, but I hate this child. I hate him.
Yeah, no, there's none of that. Like, the attitude's not there, but it's like that weird little kid voice, and they all have that kind of like way that they talk. And I'm like, no, I can't. I don't like children in the first place, and I'm definitely gonna not watch a cartoon where children supply the voices.
That's fair.
You know, it's funny. My roommate Sean called that out. So we were recently over at Dell and Simpkins' place, and I think we were playing a board game in the dining room while their daughter was watching Bluey. And Sean pointed out that their voices sounded very weird to him. Like, just he couldn't really put his finger on it, but it's like it's a very distinct style. But it's clearly children's voices, but it was a little unsettling to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, Caillou, all I can say is the best response to anything related to that bald freak is Arthur's little sister's clenched fist.
Oh, GW.
Yep.
One of my favorite memes.
Oh, gosh. Also, I love it. Kibi Buffet in chat. Caillou, ni hao. And then Kibi also wants to know, Randall, is this why you don't come to their drag shows? Is because of the little kid voices? Which now I kind of want to go even more because I'm like, I have more questions.
Yeah. No, I don't come to the drag shows because the bar is packing people in like sardines. during COVID times, and multiple people have gotten sick, and I don't want to be sick, even if I am vaccinated.
Yeah, I'm not ready to be back at bars yet. I'm not there. I can't reconcile it in my brain just yet.
Yeah, I was out yesterday with a friend, lured out with the lie that we were just going to go get dinner and a couple of drinks. And then it
bamboozled.
Yeah, oh yeah. And I even said, like, okay, but I don't want to be out late, so we have to leave before it gets loud and stupid. And so then he's like, it's getting loud and stupid here. Let's go to this other bar. And then we went, and it was much worse. And I'm like, I told you. Not happy right now. So then I just made the Justin Timberlake meme face where I was just the entire
I can see
time.
you doing it too. Oh, that's too good.
Hebe says, Emily, I once made someone leave a show because I did Toad's rendition of All I Want for Christmas Is You.
Oh my goodness. Oh. Oh, yeah. I will admit that this is such a weird thing. Because, well, I was teaching summer camp and I was teaching a lot of younger kids and they wanted to listen to like current music. Well, I don't personally care as far as if it's played on the radio, they're going to hear it anyways. Like that's kind of where I'm at. But because I teach at a family establishment, I try to work within the confines of that. This is all to say, I listen to a lot of Kids Bop. And I have a weird place in my brain now for like kids and kids' voices. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
No, it's a no for me.
No, I don't think I will.
No, I don't think I will.
Which is exactly where I tuned out of watching Scoob the other night when Simon Cowell showed up. And I'm like, okay, no, that was a fun 10 minutes. I'm done now.
I was so sad too because I got a message from Randall and I was like, hey, like Scoop, like I remember being excited because Scoop had such beautiful character design. It looked so fun. And I was like, oh, that's good. He'll watch it and, let me know. And then I can finally catch up on it. And he's like,
yeah,
10 minutes. I made it 10 minutes and now I'm mad. I'm like, oh no.
Dell says, that Kids Bop did Follow Me by Uncle Cracker broke my brain.
Yo, they have covered everything. If there's a song you want and you're worried it might not be child appropriate, because y'all, I miss stuff a lot. Like, because I co-teach with someone for dance, I always run music past her and she's kind of my censor for it. Like, hey, should we play this? And think she's like, Emily, it says this. I'm like, oh yeah, it does. I wasn't paying attention. So I'll go to the kids version. I'm just like, oh my gosh, they've covered everything. There's a Kids Bop version of any song you want. Including the most recent, Lil Nas hit. There's a Kids Bop version of that. I'm just like, I can't wrap my brain around this.
So not Kids Bop, but that makes me think of the fact that there are so many pop songs and rock songs that have been played over the years that have been like, top 40 hits that are incredibly, incredibly inappropriate. And especially stuff from the 90s and early 2000s that is now getting played like in stores, like department stores. Like Third Eye Blind. Almost every song is about how he's a meth head. And all like his girlfriends and his friends are also in the drug scene. And it's like, these are not easy listening songs, folks. These are anthems of a strung out generation that need help. Like, I just don't get it. I understand that it's got a sweet major chord that is like why we're singing along to it, but this is like wildly inappropriate.
Yeah.
Well, there's like a whole psychological study of that and like how they decide what songs to play in the grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
Is there really?
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I've not ventured into researching it, but there's like a very particular method that they go about like finding songs that will encourage people to like linger in the grocery store. You know, not to be confused with that wonderful hit that probably also gets played in the grocery store called Linger.
Which I hate.
Um,
I hate it.
but yeah, they want to like keep you there and in a good mood, and like there are certain songs that evoke that like stay in shop vibe.
Oh my gosh. It makes complete sense, and like there's part of me that's like, no, I'm not shocked at all that literally every piece of my experience is engineered by a marketing person, but at the same time I'm just like, it's so much. And I'm just like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I feel so weird.
There was actually a thing that came out recently talking about phones and how your phones are targeting you with ads in very creepy ways. And, you know, a lot of people like my phone's listening to me or it's using my camera, which could be true. But there's an even sneakier way that they're doing it.
Oh no.
So whenever you use an app and you allow them access to your contacts, it will generate ads for you based on your GPS location. Like if it sees, oh, you're in Target, then somebody that's in your contact list that they see uses the Target app and has bought this or that, they will send you an ad for that because it's like, oh, my mom uses that toothpaste. I should buy that. Like, so that's how they're mostly like weaseling their way into your ad space.
Into my brain.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
It's super creepy.
Dell says, I let Glowy listen to anything postmodern jukebox because I'm a bad parent. I don't know that you're a bad parent.
I don't think you're a bad parent at all. Also,
No.
postmodern jukebox slaps.
Oh, Hebe also says, so fun fact, if you have your location on at Target, the prices may change in the app.
What?
I know, for example, with the Walmart app, because I use it all the time, the price check in stores. Pro tip, by the way, if you didn't know, if you get the app and you're shopping in a Walmart, you can scan stuff with the app and check prices. It checks your GPS location. So like I can't scan stuff back here at the house and see what it is priced at my local store. I have to be in the store to see it. It'll only show me .com prices.
Oh, wow.
It's very precise in that manner.
That's so creepy.
Dell says, and I'm super salty that Pentatonics is coming to Turning Stone, and I don't trust our local idiots not to give me COVID at the show. I'm sad that Nicole won't be visiting when they are playing at Turning Stone, because that would be a cool show.
Yeah,
No,
that'd be
thanks.
awesome.
Like, they're awesome and I love them, but I don't want to go to one of their shows again just because there's so many people. Because it's a weird, like, backwards thing. I don't like going to shows of artists that are super popular because there's just too many people for me.
No, honestly, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you don't enjoy that heavy, intense crowd experience, it's really hard to get past that to enjoy the live music. Like, I've had concerts that I really was excited to go to ruined by the people around me. And, like, it has tainted that experience. And it's a bummer because I like live shows. I like the unpredictable nature of hearing songs that I already enjoy done in a different way, different tempo, mixed with something else, performed live, all of these different things. And yet, you know, I've got some drunken person who crashes into me and knocks me down. Like, well, this is less fun for me now.
Without fail, every time I go to a concert, the person that is the drunkest and the loudest is right behind me. And I don't understand how it happens, but it's every time.
Like, how did you find me again?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got tons of stories because I've gone to a lot of shows, and like one of the most glaring examples of that is I saw Arctic Monkeys in Boston around 10 years ago, and this was before their self-titled album came out that actually made charts over here in the States. So they were still they were playing a club, not really not an auditorium or anything like that. And the crowd, like right next to me in the crowd, were all these like sweaty, I guess I would call them like deadhead types, you know, like
Okay.
they were all wearing like the tie-dye and the all that kind of stuff, and they were gross and they smelled nasty, but they were like moshing, and I'm like, it's Arctic monkeys. Like,
Who
yeah,
matches the Arctic monkey?
it's like this stuff bops, but it's like not
Not like
throw
that.
yourself into your buddy. So I had to stand there. Like there was a giant stone pillar. There was two big giant stone pillars in the middle of that club, Paradise Rock Club over by University of Boston. Or no. I'm sorry, Boston College. And I put my arm on one of the pillars, and I just had to hold back like 6 guys using physics and leverage to keep them from crushing me and the people I was with and a few other people nearby, because they just wouldn't stop. And then I also had like all these college age girls and skinny kids who kept trying to sneak under my arms to get in front of me to get closer to the front of the show. And I was just like, I remember distinctly looking at one kid. He's like, he turns to his girl and he's like, when they switch songs, we're going to push through. We're just going to push through. You got to follow me. And I looked at him and I was like, you're not. You think you're going to, but look at me. And he's like, I'm like, you're not. Just like, I'm like, I don't understand people who have to ruin a good time for everybody else because they're so selfish.
Right.
That they have to push to the front or they've got to jump around or act like idiots. Like, dude, if you go to a metal show, I listen to all types of music. I've been to like Ozfest and other metal shows. There's a pit for a reason. And it's not my thing, but I respect why you do it. And I respect that, like, at a good show, the pit is actually pretty safe because people look out for each other. Go nuts. But I'm not interested. So, like, don't pull me into it because, you know, your idea of a good time is to make everybody else do exactly what you're doing.
Nope. I'm so happy you brought that up because that's always been my big thing, because I am not a large human. I'm very small, and moshing it has never been an interest to me, especially when I'm at a live show. Like, I want to be there. I want to enjoy the music. Like, I'm going to dance, but it's a very, like, I'm going to dance in my spot. Like, that's the extent of this. But almost every metal show I've ever been to, if I was close enough to the pit to have it be possibly like bleed into my area, like they have been the most respectful and like contained. Like, they're losing their minds and they're all bleeding, but they understand that you don't want to do that, and that's why you're not in the pit with them. And I'm like, this is the kind of understanding that I'm looking for. Like, everybody's enjoying the show as much as they want to in the way that they want to. And if you're not doing what someone else is doing, it's fine. And I was like, that's what I look for. So then when I'm at another show that's not a metal show and I'm like, what are you idiots doing? I was like, this is not how this works. Like, it was Dropkick Murphys and Flogging Molly. And I had people being stupid all around me. And I'm just like, no, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I feel like Irish punk is that perfect mix of people who really like to drink and really want to have a good time and don't care if you're having a good time as long as they're having a good time. Yeah. Dropkick played the brewery here in town, Saranac, one year.
Oh, wow.
Saranac usually does like an end of the season, like they'll get a big, maybe not an A-list act, but like a strong like B-list. Popular at one time, people really like them, people will show up for them. And that was their capstone one year, was Dropkick. And it was like a year or two after Shipping Off to Boston had been really huge. Yeah. So it was a really crazy show. And a lot of people were there. And I was up in it. Like, I drank a lot of beer. And I was up in it wasn't a pit, but it was definitely like a little bit of a mosh. Mm-hmm. And it was a good time, but people were pretty chill. But it can get pretty gnarly.
Yeah. And that was the one where I had been with a group of people, and then we kind of split off, and myself and a very tall former hockey player, former bouncer gentleman who's my friend, stood next to me for the rest of the show. And y'all, it was the most pleasant music experience I've ever had. People didn't come within 3 feet of me. It's the first time I've not been walked into because someone was walking and didn't see me. Like, they didn't come near me. I'm like, oh, I'm bringing you to every show from now on. This is it. This is what this is like for you. This is so cool. And because people are afraid of him, they wouldn't sit right in front of us or stand right in front of us. So I'm like, I can see, and there's no one in front of. This is so cool. So, good times. Oh, concerts.
Hebe says, Randall, we need to do something nerdy together soon. Giggity. Del just reminded me. So, clear your schedule, apparently.
No. Refer to my GIF in the Discord. My anxiety says no. Stop inviting me to things.
Okay. Changed my mind on this.
It is interesting, though, and like what you were saying, kind of corroborating what I was saying about like the heavier shows you go to, even though it's more intense, like in the pit or the front area, the people tend to be more like aware of each other and more considerate, and like there's a bit more of a community vibe.
Honestly, some of the most wonderful humans I met were at, oh gosh, it was Avenged Sevenfold, it was like Seven Dust, it was Adelita's Way, like all of these like fairly big metal acts. I don't get into like screamo type stuff, but like that level. But everybody, like when I was trying to get through crowds and everything or stuff like that, like they were so nice and so chill. I was just like, oh, thanks, guys. And I think it's partially, again, as we were talking about glasses way early on, like I don't have contacts. And while I can see fine up close, I can't see distance and I can't drive without my glasses. So I very much become Velma where I'm like, no, if you smash my glasses in pit, I can't get home. Like, and I still can't then see the concert for the rest of the time because it's just in blur mode and I don't want to see, like, I like watching it in HD. That's why I came. So yeah, and again, like I said, I'm small. And while I am a small tank, like I don't want the crap beat out of me. It's just not my thing.
I actually think in my experiences, like some of the more unruly groups have been like your jam band types, believe it or not. And they kind of have that reputation of being like the chilled out hippies, but like sometimes they get really like, I guess it's part of the whole the culture vibe of like being inebriated in the way that they are. They just stop being aware of other people's like boundaries and state of happiness. It's kind of weird.
It's very strange. It really is. And again, it's the shows where I'm like, wait, what? Like I went to, it was not my personal pick, but I went with someone, ended up having a great time, but I went to see All American Rejects and Dashboard Confessional. Like these aren't ones that scream, we're gonna get crazy to me. Yeah. But like part of the, like, I guess.
Vindicated!
But now, like, I went 5 years ago. I was like, all of these people are adults. Like, we're old now. The people who really vibed with this are old now. What are you doing? You're going to get yourself hurt. Or you're going to hurt me. But I was like, what? What?
Yeah, like 15 years ago, I would totally understand. Well, actually, so you're talking about the scene of, like, when pop punk went big and you started getting the kids who would scissor kick and like all that stuff into the pit, and I was like, no, we shove and we shake our heads violently. We do not swing wildly and not pay attention to the things around us, the arms and the just windmilling in and scissor kicking and everything in between. Like, no, it's you are not Jackie Chan. Sit down.
Stop it. He had such great control. You want to be Jackie Chan? Have great control. You missed the point. Yeah. Again, like emo, like pop punk, all of that. Again, at a certain point, like I never went to Warped Tour because that was kind of the experience you were going to get, and that also was a whole day. And I was like, that sounds exhausting. But
oh yeah,
you know,
big festival shows are rough.
like, but as you know, this is at our local place, which is a super chill vibe. It's an outdoor concert. I'm just like, seriously? It was like a Thursday night too. I was like, y'all have just been waiting to go real hard at All American Rejects on a Thursday in your 30s. Like, okay, I'm sorry, I missed the memo.
Yeah, my takeaway is if it's loud and you're touching me, I'm not having a good time. So
Again, this is why you and my sister get along so well.
yes,
Like-
this is why I do not go to shows where that is a potential thing that will happen. I'm like, no, I will happily go to like the acoustic folk concert with all the lesbians because that's my vibe.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's like finding the venue can help a lot too. Here in upstate New York, well, actually kind of over more towards compared to me, Omegang Brewery in Cooperstown.
Yeah, I have heard so many people who've had like experiences with that, and I haven't made it yet, but I want to.
So they have some kind of like they have a hill behind their brewery that's basically a natural amphitheater of sorts, and they book like again like your B tier, your mid tier like acts, and it's awesome because it's like you can bring lawn chairs, you can bring a blanket, you know, there's plenty of room for everybody. They do food carts and food trucks and everything there. They have all of their, you know, you want to imbibe, there's the brewery and everything with all of their offerings, and it's just chill. I've seen, I think, like 5 or 6 different shows there, and it's just always been super chill, and there's plenty of space for everyone. If people want to push up to the front, there's plenty of room for that, and it's just like, and some of the best shows I've ever seen in a setting like that, because like the artists really appreciate the vibe as well, because it's not intense, it's not claustrophobic, it's just chill.
Yeah.
And I don't think it like necessarily cramps on like the intensity of the show. They can still do their show, they can still pour themselves into their music, but it's just
Yeah. It's one of those where, again, I don't know, it's just because I frequently go to shows that are at smaller venues or stuff like that. Like the huge shows are awesome, and if you want to do stadium shows, that's great, or crazy, you know, Warped Tour type things. Like I've done 1-day festivals for metal stuff, and I really like that, but multiple days I'm just like, I don't know if I have that stamina yet. But I like kind of the chill, like it doesn't detract from the music at all for me. I still enjoy this content that this band creates, even if it's not, you know, the most heightened experience. I'm still enjoying it. Honestly, probably enjoying it a little bit more if it's kind of chill.
Yeah, I think a smaller venue or a more chill like outdoor venue are like the best, because the big stadium shows just also depends on your seats. Like
Yeah, I think the only big like stadium one that I went to and I knew I was going to, and this was the experience I was going to have, is Rammstein, and it was because they don't come to the States. They don't play the States that much now. Like if you want to go to their show, you need to go to Jones Beach where there's hundreds of thousands of people, because that's what this show is. But it's also, you know, highly theatrical pyrotechnics. So there is an element that makes sense in that. But for that one experience, I'm like, yep, I know what I'm getting into. I know what to expect. It's going to be a crazy long line. Once you get to your seats, unless you really got to pee, you're not leaving because you have to hike a ways. And that was my one. I'm like, okay, I'm good now.
So one of my best friends and I did Pearl Jam at Madison Square Garden 2 nights in a row for their they did their PJ20 tour. It was the 20th, or no, wait, I'm sorry. Was it, am I mathing wrong in my head?
Oh no.
It was either the 10th or 20th anniversary of 10. I think it was 20th, because I think it's been 30 years now. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, that checks out. It was 20 years, yep. And so they were doing a national tour and they were hitting all the big places, but Madison Square Garden is supposed to be like the best place because it's such a unique, like it's a unique venue. Like there's this like folk myth about how like only the best bands that play there can get the like building to vibrate a certain way because people are so into it and they're cheering so loudly or whatever.
Huh? That's cool.
And it was awesome. It was an incredible experience, but quite frankly, our seats sucked. and dealing with all the crowds sucked, and we
Yeah.
could barely see them. And it's almost more enjoyable for me to go back and watch YouTube videos of that show.
Honestly, yeah. Speaking of Rammstein specifically, there's a great like concert DVD that's like 4 DVDs or something like that you can get, and it's all this incredible footage up close of them performing at all these amazing shows around the world. And I was like, as much as I'm so happy I got to see them in person, I would rather stay at home and watch the DVD with a really good sound system, because you get to see so much more. Like, we were so far away from the band that it was the full experience of it, but I was like, I didn't go to that to have an intimate experience with this kind of thing. Like, it was very much just, nope, this is a thing, I want to check it off my bucket list type stuff.
It's like, oh, Till's holding a giant penis, and it's so big that I can see it from here. Yay.
I'm really far away. That must be a really big penis. Yeah, I will admit, as they've gotten into their 50s and their 60s, they've chilled a little bit. Not much, but a little bit.
Not much, yeah.
Yeah. He had a whole very cool, again, I'm here for the pyrotechnics. Like, give me all of the flame. I love it. But he had a huge, like, angel wings set that was a full harness, and it lifted him up. And then that, of course, shot flames. And I'm like, well, this is cool. So, yeah. It was funny because the way they had it, again, it's like steep, like stadium seating, and we were way up there, but there was a couple of big pillars that also shot flames, and we were close enough to those that we could feel the warmth from them. And I'm like, that's a weird experience, but I like it. I like fire.
Yeah, they're one of the exits on my bucket list that I haven't seen yet. I think they're one of the only ones left too that I haven't gotten to see.
Well, and that was kind of with them specifically, like, the opportunity came up, and the small group of people that would care to do that, I was like, we kind of have to do it now. Like, we have to make this work, because, again, it's been like 4 years since they toured in the US, and their tour dates keep getting less and less, not more and more. So.
Well, yeah, they were technically banned from North America for a little while because of the pyrotechnic stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah. They also are not shy about their criticisms of the United States. Like, they're not quiet about it. They've been very vocal for very long. So, yeah.
Same. I'm waiting for them to tell me to get out.
Yeah, I hope to get a chance to see them, but so they put out an album right before COVID that some people might have been aware of with the song Deutschland. And like, people were like, all right, this album's incredible, but they're like old. Like, this has to be the last album, right? Like, this is it, right? And I'm like, please don't quit forever. I would like to see you once before you go.
I know it.
Jumping back a little bit, Steve said, I did a thing called the PBJ20 tour, but it was a little different. I went through a whole loaf of bread and cried a lot.
I can't tell if that's just a sandwich making thing or
Yep.
like...
Sonata Mag says, I'm in an art store right now. Hi, y'all.
What up? More art supplies, yes.
We're way off the topic of Saturday morning cartoons, but speaking of like music bucket lists, are there any artists that you guys would like to see before maybe they stop touring or anything like that?
Trixie Mattel.
Oh, okay, yes. I want to go with you to that one, because...
Yeah, she was here like around my birthday last year, but, you know, then COVID happened, and I should have just gone when she was here.
I'm trying to think. I'm pretty close. Like, I think at one point it would have been Metallica. It's not as much anymore. Like, again, that's one of those where I was like, you know what? Again, there is so much concert footage of them in really high quality. I think I'm good. And it's nothing like, I super enjoy their new bassist, who's not new anymore. Let's be real, but
he's been in the band for 20 years.
I know. I said that. And I was like, oh, he's not new. He's not new. Oh,
he's actually been in the band longer than Jason was now.
Again, these are things where I'm just like, what? No, time.
Yeah.
Hurts me. Yeah, they were one. trying to think. I got to check off Breaking Benjamin relatively recently, which made me happy. They're very different from the band they started as, but they put on a great show. I was very happy with that. Yeah. I'm trying to think of ones where I'm just like, I really need to see this one. A lot of them now I'm like, I enjoyed these bands, like Walk Off the Earth or Walk the Moon. Both of the walking ones would be cool. Pentatonics would be cool, but I'm not actively seeking them, I'll say.
Randall, I know you're not really fond of crowds, but is there any? Oh, you actually said one already. I'm sorry. Was there anybody else?
I mean, not really. There are some nerdy groups that I wouldn't mind going to see. Like they do those, like the, my brain just farted. It's, they do like the speed runs of video games like Mega Man, and they play the music while they're speed running.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it's like, they've done it for Mega Man and Castlevania. So they do like these hard rock covers of like the music, and like some nerds sitting there speedrunning.
There have been a few concert tours that have been done with video game music that I would be interested in seeing, like Final Fantasy and a few other things.
Oh yeah, the Final Fantasy concert's great. I've been to a couple of them. I actually had like one of those defining nerd moments of my life. I went to the one that they did here in Pittsburgh back in 2015, and not even like the best seats. It was like on the ground floor, maybe like 6 or 7 rows back, like it wasn't close. Just happened to get these seats at a decent price. And of all the seats in the building, Hitoshi Sakimoto, who did the score for like Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy 12 and a whole score of Vanillaware games, sat in my row. And I sat there looking at him. I'm like, you are one of my idols. Like, I absolutely love everything you do. And I just sat there staring at him the entire time.
Oh, I love that. Speaking of like the nerdy things, like I got to see them once at Dragon Con, but I'd watch Cybertronic Spree again in a heartbeat. Like that crowd energy, everybody was on the same page. Like they ripped out the Pokemon theme and the whole crowd is just losing their minds. I was like, this is the level that I would like to be at. Yes, thank you.
I wish we hadn't missed it, but Nicole and I were so exhausted last Dragon Con we went to.
Yeah, no, because that one was late, wasn't it? Like it didn't end up going on until like 1 or 2 in the morning. Again, there's a reason I was sick for a month after Dragon Con 2019. Like I don't recommend this, but it was nice to see them.
Before I throw it to Nicole, Hebe in chat says, in quotes, I'd love seeing this one drag queen. I think her name is Hebe Buffet. She's hot. I believe that is meant to be said in Randall's voice, though. Sonata says, is this a new evolution of Polyphonic Spree? Sort of. It's the band, it's called Cybertronic Spree, and they're all dressed as Transformers. And they basically just do covers for the most part. I think they have a couple of original songs now, but
most of it's
mostly
covers.
just covers. But it's pretty good covers. Like they
they are talented musicians for sure.
Yeah, I would say they're like a level above your average bar band for sure.
Yes.
Yep. And the whole shtick is like, it's fun, you know? You can find them on YouTube.
Yeah, the theatricality of it is really like, it's part of the experience. And I'm not even a big Transformers person. Like I could take it or leave it with them, but the whole experience is just, it's really fun. It's just really, really fun.
All right, Nicole, you, bucket list artists that you have not seen yet, who would you like to see?
So there's really only 2, and one of them I don't think they're ever going to come here is Clipping.
Okay.
I don't think they'll ever come here. They're too niche, I think. But the other is Panic at the Disco.
Oh.
Just because, like, Brendan is just such a ball of energy. I would love to witness it. But again, with the crowds, you know.
I'm so
Mhm.
glad you said that because as you're saying that, I was like, nope, that is actually one. I know it's going to be a big show. I know I'm probably not going to have a crazy amount of time, like fun because of the insanity of the crowd. But yeah, I'd watch them in a heartbeat. I'd see them like them and Fall Out Boy if they toured together again. I would go to that show because, yeah, just for Brendan Urie. Like that's really, let's be real. That's why I'm there.
Yep, he's the best.
I actually
Uh,
did go to a show that was Panic at the Disco and Fall Out Boy years ago.
Ah.
I would go to that show with Nicole, and I would pretend like I was put out by it, but I would actually really enjoy it.
Oh God, why are we here? Oh, this is so good.
It's so good. He's so talented.
Well, that's funny because like when Panic and Fall Out Boy were like really breaking out and were really popular, and that whole like little subgenre built up around them. I remember even back then I was like, okay, there's something different about Panic. Like, they're a cut above their peers,
Mhm.
and that's not a knock. Like, because Fall Out Boy, as ubiquitous as they were at the height of their popularity, and how that was kind of annoying, they are crazy talented. Their
Yeah.
music is really catchy and really good, and the lyrics are actually remarkably clever in a lot of cases. So I have a lot of respect for them. I just got really tired of hearing the stuff constantly when they were popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope. Same with their Fall Out Boy's first album. Like I had a roommate in college who listened to that constantly, and I hated it. I was like, I'm not here for it. Like, and honestly, I think it was Sugar. Sugar was the one where I was just like,
Mhm.
this is Fall Out Boy. Spoilers, it's not. But it's what made them popular and made them famous. Like they've gone on to produce such great music since, but that was my introduction to them, and I was like, I'm not here for this. I can't get away from it. Please stop. But yeah, now I'm just like, oh dang. Okay. My bad, guys.
My first stint in college, my roommate was listening to AFI Sing the Sorrow a lot. Like he got it from a friend, and he just listened to it endlessly. He kept listening to Girls Not Grey over and over again. Now that is one of my favorite pop punk albums of all time. But at the time, I was like, please stop playing that expletive deleted song. Like, I'm so over it.
Yep.
Hebe says, I was in the group that listened to all that stuff, but didn't actually listen to stuff beyond the singles. I was the fringe one who was a weeb and listened to J-pop and happy hardcore.
Same.
I don't think there's anything wrong. Which is funny because that fringe is no longer fringe. That is pretty much... I don't want to say it's like mainstream, but it's definitely not fringe anymore.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the capital letters, which I guess is a normal popular thing now for teens.
Yeah, again, the window that I have into teens and what's popular is the students that I teach, and especially because they're the art kids. They're the weird video game kids, they're the weird anime kids. Like this is my time portal back to my same like coming of age and finding all this stuff. And it's so weird because the stuff that they're wearing, the stuff they can find, like they can get it at Hot Topic. And I was like, this was such weird, nerdy, out there stuff that you could never find. Like, if I wanted a Sailor Moon jacket, I'd have to make it myself. Like, that didn't exist. And now you can buy, I can buy my own locket that has makeup inside of it because Sailor Moon's still that popular. And it's so surreal to me. And I'm thrilled. Like, I am genuinely happy that you can wear your nerd happiness on your body. That's fantastic. More power to you. It's just so weird to me because it was not a thing. Like it was not a thing we did.
EB says, I crawled so they could walk, and in my mind I heard, I was crawling in. Okay, I'm done.
Yes.
Also says, being a weeaboo is definitely mainstream now. Doja Cat is a weeb. Megan Thee Stallion is a weeb. Probably like one of the most prominent, I think, nowadays is Michael B. Jordan, really famous actor, is a, unrepentant weeb.
Yeah.
So
Michelle
much so.
Visage from Drag Race fame, like goes on Twitter all the time talking about how she wants Pokemon remakes because her daughter got her into it.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world today, for sure. And it's also, I think it's a little bit regional too, because like when I watch streamers from like California, they're all weebs. almost all
Yeah.
of them. You know, and it's like it's very mainstream, like in California. Where if you're in like rural New York, it might not be as mainstream, but it's still pretty mainstream. I think if Simkin was here, he could talk about his students. I would think most of his students in like video game design programs are pretty much near ubiquitous weebs.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Or at least have watched some stuff and like aren't averse to it. Because it was very polarizing back when we were kids. Like you were either into it or not into it at all.
Yeah.
As I recall.
I think part of that was, once again, we talk about accessibility. Like, it was
Mm.
hard to get to. So if you really wanted it, like, you had to really want it. I feel like it was a little bit more difficult to just be a casual watcher, unless you had friends who were really into it, and then they would share that with you. Like, if you
Yeah.
enjoyed this at all, you kind of had to become a little fanatical about it, because that was the only way to consume it.
Mhm.
Which led to a lot of very weird people.
Yeah, we're real weird. We're very strange. And then we went to college with a whole bunch of people just like us.
Oh, it's like even when I go to cons now and they come up to the table and I'm like, that's right, you exist, and I am not that level of weird. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Hebe says, "Oh, you read those weird backwards books with the booba."
Oh, the weird backwards books. I love it so much.
Also says, "I remember when the manga section at Barnes & Noble was just one section of shelving. It is massive now."
It's true.
It's
Well,
insane.
It's kind of the same with comics, though. Like, just, Western comics, because 20 years ago, like, you had to go to a comic store. Like, you could go to Barnes & Noble and there would be a section, but it wasn't, like, an entire aisle like it is today.
No.
Yeah.
With every compilation and trade paperback ever just on display. Shakes cane, Phoebe. Shakes cane.
It was funny. I'm trying to remember, because it was definitely Kruggles and Future X Skeleton. So it was two of the three, including myself, members of In Addition. But we were talking about comics and being into comics in high school. And it was funny because Steph was coming from it. I think it was when we were talking about conventions, possibly. And it was the like, well, no, like, it's cool and blah, blah, blah. And like, you were into this really cool thing. And it was funny because both Mike and I were like, but it wasn't cool. Like,
Yeah, it wasn't cool then.
No.
the reason that I let people know that I liked comics and I drew comics is because I would draw hot women for my straight guy friends who would pay me for my art. Like, that's how I let people know that I liked comics. And it was a lot of like, yeah, I read Witchblade, which I did and genuinely enjoyed, but also it was hot girls. So this was an accessibility point to people who didn't. But beyond that, like, I didn't, aside from my close knit group of friends, I didn't talk about that like I do now, because it wasn't mainstream and it wasn't celebrated like it is now. Yeah.
The thing I always like to point to is Star Wars.
Mhm.
I distinctly remember when the prequels came out, I was reading the novelization for episode 1 in a social studies class, and I got like hazed over it by one of my peers. One of my peers who was a computer nerd. He was like the only kid in my school that like actually knew how to program and built computers on his own like all the time. And he hazed me for being into Star Wars. And here we are 20 years later, and it's like, if you're not at least casually into Star Wars, who are you?
Yeah.
Are
I
you
love
sure
that.
he wasn't just hazing you for liking episode 1 and reading a book about episode 1? Because that's a choice.
I didn't know yet. The film hadn't come. It was the novelization, and the film hadn't come out yet. I'm sorry.
We were just so starved for additional Star
Listen.
Wars content. We just wanted more. It was supposed to be so good.
R.A. Salvatore wrote the novelization for episode 1, and he wrote the Dritz series, and I loved his books, and I read that novelization, and then I saw the movie, and I was like, what is this?
No.
Why?
No.
Okay, once again, those of you playing Drag Race, Doodle Crew Bingo at home, cross off trauma if you have that on your card.
That's the center square.
That's the free one.
Yeah. Well, and so again, trauma, but also I feel like nerd on nerd hate was very in vogue. Like,
Mhm.
again, like you could be a certain kind of nerd and that was okay, but there were types of nerd that you would get hate for and you'd get
Mhm.
shit on and like called out, and I was like, wait, but we're both nerds. Why is my nerd thing not acceptable and your nerd thing is?
Yeah. It's wild to me how in vogue being a nerd is now.
Yeah.
And it's like it's spread like the quote unquote normie Chad bros are just nerdy about their own things, like like fantasy football.
I was gonna say, it's literally got fantasy in the name.
Mm-hmm. It's like uh the classic is when you hear like particularly like a boomer who's like, wait a minute, you guys watch people play video games? Why don't you just play video games? And I'm like, you watch people play baseball, right? Why
Yeah.
why don't you just play baseball? And they're like,
I love it too, because then they're like, well, it takes skill and all of this, and I'm just like, just take a moment, listen to the words you just said. just work with me here. Just take.
Yep.
We're just gonna sit for a second in those words. Okay. Yeah. Oh gosh.
The row that happened when ESPN showed esports for the first time, and just the internet was ablaze with people like, what the hell is this? What? This isn't sports. It's like you'll watch people scrub ice with a broom while somebody pushes a giant rock with a handle on it. But it's not okay to watch somebody play Dota or something on
Yeah.
ESPN.
Oh,
Wait,
gosh.
so Hebe said there are Twitch hate raids? That's a
Yeah,
thing?
that's a thing
Yeah.
recently, I guess.
Ew.
Yeah.
The Twitch meta is ever shifting and ever more disappointing.
Again, it's I feel like being left to our own devices at home for a couple of years now has really broken people in hey, maybe I shouldn't be as terrible to other humans. Are like, no, now there is no break between the internet and my real life, and now I'm just going to be terrible outwardly because there's no consequences and everything is on fire. Like, I feel like you took the wrong takeaway from the past 2 years. You missed the point a lot.
Oh, so he'd be saying, so since they added tags for marginalized communities, yep, that's kind of like a beacon, a bat signal, if you will, for hate.
Jeez.
Which is great for discoverability, yeah. Well, the internet is always a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Like, I am a, kind of fervent Redditor. And people will always be like, oh, Reddit is the worst. And I'm like, it can be, but it can also be the best. Like, for me, Reddit has been a community where I can find out obscure information about something that I'm into that a few dozen other people in the world are into. Or it can be, a place where people collect together to fat shame or any other, hateful thing.
Mhm.
It's rough.
I'm glad you mentioned Reddit specifically because, again, I feel like that because sometimes the people that got the most press and the most vocal ones were the really terrible sides of Reddit. And that was, again, I was so afraid of Reddit for so long because I'm just like, no, it's a bad place. Like, it's literally the elephant graveyard. Like, I don't want to go there because bad things will happen to me there. And I was like, oh, no, there's... now there's an incredible art community. There's a whole specific, subreddit for people sharing detailed information about Clip Studio Paint, this one piece of software that people like. And it's this welcoming, like, hey, you have questions. Here's this. Here's a promo code. All of that. Like, there are so many facets to it that got very much, just washed over because there were some really terrible people being the loudest.
I think perhaps the best example of that is Facebook, right? So it's very popular nowadays for people to be like, oh, I deleted my Facebook. Facebook is just, so gross now. And it's like, yeah, you're not wrong. Like, not to be ageist, but because the boomers found it. But like, You're right, but at the same time, like Facebook has utility that is unmatched by other platforms. Like when COVID kicked off, I got to get up to the moment like information in my local area because of the way Facebook localizes your feed and prioritizes local information, and that was really helpful. I got to see people that I know that I live nearby talking about what was going on, prioritized over just like the national like conversation about it. And it's like when something like that happens, or like when a catastrophic weather event happens or something, that is important. And it's like the kind of community that can really only be achieved on Facebook.
Mhm.
But it's also the worst because when somebody wants to spread hate, it's as easy as clicking share.
Yeah.
Share. And you see the accounts, like people that I used to care about that are like share, share, share. And I'm like, please stop sharing hateful crap. Like, please.
Yeah.
If you want to find hate, it's as easy as going to your local news channel's Facebook page and
Oh.
seeing all of the awful comments.
The comment section on like anything news related is
Oh,
like,
it's-
oh my God.
And it's one of those, I have lived by the don't read YouTube comments for so many years of my life, but Facebook news will get me and I will catch myself too late because I'll almost be like raging or in tears over it. And I'm like, what did you do? What did you do? Like literally become outside of my body and look at it like with the rolled up newspaper, like, what did you do? I was like, I'm so sorry. I don't know how I got here. Also, Randall and I save our work from Hebe Buffet. Thank you.
Nicole, save your work.
I am. I'm letting it dry.
All right. I need to take a little Transformers break.
Also, Nicole, I'm super, super excited about your piece. It looks so cool.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm really happy with so far.
Yeah, that's really nice. It looks so professional and finished.
I
And
know.
not like just
That's
some...
rare for me.
Yeah.
Aw, I like yours too, Emily.
Thanks. I'm cleaning her up. She's getting there. It's weird because it's not the character I started with. Like she's gone through some interesting evolutions through this, but I kind of dig it. So I want her to be cute. Cute
Can I
little
just
Aw.
say you're totally giving me like Waffles vibes?
Aw, yay!
'Cause I think she had characters that were like roller skaters or something.
Yes.
Wild.
I love it. If you don't know what we're talking about in chat, there is Drawing with Waffles, which is the most incredible YouTube art account, which humbles me to my core because she's phenomenal. And I've been getting inspired by her a bunch the last few weeks.
So Waffles is the one that does like the different media a lot of the time.
A little bit. She does a lot in like actual physical sketchbooks.
Right.
And she'll do this thing where Randall, she finishes sketchbooks. Like she draws on almost every page and then finishes a sketchbook and starts a new one.
Yeah, I've watched some of her stuff. And she's like, I'm just gonna like play with these colors, and like I think one of the ones I watched was creating characters based on candy.
Oh yeah.
Andy.
And she's like, I'm gonna draw on this page and then turn it over and draw on the back. And I'm like, no, you can't do that.
Can't do that.
What are you doing?
She's like, it's okay if it bleeds through. I'll just work it in. And I'm like, I don't understand.
No.
Yeah. It's like when I was getting into some of the original stuff and just watching her like complete things and like finish a sketch and then be like, okay, like we'll move on to something else. I'm like, wow, this is cool. I didn't know you could do art this way. I don't do art that way. Yeah. Oh, Hebe Buffet, good call out. Because there are people who finish journals. These are humans that exist in the world. I don't know them, but
Generally just like people who finish things. Like how?
it sounds so cool. Anybody out there who actually finishes things, can you tell us? Can you tell us what it's like? Paint us a word
The
picture.
concept sounds interesting.
It sounds so cool.
So Emily, did I share the video with you the other day that I had found that was like really mind-blowing and opened my mind to some things, that was about climbing your wall of awful?
Think so. It sounds familiar. Also, this is a terrible thing. Randall sends me the most amazing videos, of which usually at the time I can't watch when he sends them. So I bookmark them, and then I'll go back through like a week's worth of stuff, and I'll comment back on it. He's like, I didn't even remember I sent that to you. And I was like, yeah, it's been a while, but I did watch it.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Thanks.
Yeah, so to summarize this video, it's about like different ways of approaching ADHD and finishing things or even just starting things. And the way that they described it was when you're struggling, you essentially are building a wall of awful, as they phrase it. So it's like, you know that you have to call and make an appointment with the dentist, but it just seems so insurmountable that you've already started building this wall of like, you know, oh, but what if the person isn't there? Or, oh, what if they ask for information and I don't know what to tell them? So you start building a wall before you even do it. And same with art projects and things like that, you know, like, oh, but what if it's not good enough? Or what if people online heckle me and tell me how bad it is and this and that? And you like scare yourself into not wanting to start it. So just like acknowledging the fact that it's a thing and you need to like take your time and disassemble the wall and climb over it was kind of helpful.
And dare I say, even be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
In that part, which I fail at frequently. I'm like, no, these are all great. I totally understand what you're saying. That is totally acceptable for everybody else. Totally a thing. Not for me. You can't do that. No, you have to be better. You can't have that failing. It's not okay. I'm like, but why, brain? Why is that the hard line, the hill that you want to die on? Also, again, bingo players at home, check off ADHD.
Bingo.
So I'm just catching up on chat. Sorry. Sonata Meg says, I was going through my belongings and I found no less than 6 journals at different points in my life that only had 10 pages written in them. Big feels on that. Something fun, I'll tell you. And I don't know, again, I don't write, so this doesn't necessarily translate for that, but there's definitely been times where at one point, once I got into my late 20s, possibly even my early 30s, there was a small point of time where I didn't actually have any brand new sketchbooks. Like I was quote unquote out of sketchbooks, which is the most surreal experience as a former art kid who got sketchbooks for every birthday and every Christmas. So I went back and I picked up some of my half-finished sketchbooks and started working into them. And it was this very funny thing of seeing work from 5 to 10 years ago that I was then adding to now with my new skill set. Like it was kind of fun in a weird way, but I would not have done that had I not been like, oh crap, I don't have any paper. How do I not have any paper? I run out of paper.
Have you found that over the years, the things that you used to do has changed?
As far as cruelty to myself and my brain or my art style?
Well, just in general. Like, so when you were talking about your sketchbooks, I was reminded of like around 15 years ago, I was really into D&D. And so like I have documents in Google that like when I started working on my homebrew stuff and like throwing down ideas, and a lot of it's completely unfinished. And every time I open up Google Docs, I see my stuff from like 10 years ago. And I'm like, man, I should pick that up and like do something with it. But I just don't have that same energy anymore for certain things, you know, like I just don't. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's an age thing. I don't know if it's just an interest thing, or I was wondering if anybody else had anything like that where like something that you were really passionate about is just like, meh, no.
All the time.
Nicole says yes.
Yeah.
I think the big thing for me is a lot of my sketchbooks are filled with concepts and ideas that I had that were good, that I lacked the technical skill to really articulate at the time. So a lot of these I go back to and I was like, oh, that was a really weird costume idea, but that's kind of cool. Now that I can actually draw, belts and straps and everything like my poor little Final Fantasy VIII heart wanted, I can do that now. But my love of stuff is still very much the same. Like, I love drawing girls. Drawing girls is like, if you want to ask Emily what her most favorite thing to draw is, it's drawing girls. And that hasn't changed in years and years and years. I think I've expanded where I get that similar level of excitement from other things now. It's not just that one topic. Like, I like building worlds a lot more. I like building backgrounds. I like involving scenery, which was never a thing I liked for years growing up. So it's funny to go back and see some of the old stuff where I'm just like, I clearly had this great character that I wanted to draw more of, but if I drew more of her, it meant that I had to draw a world to have her in to do stuff, and I was real annoyed about it. So there's like big block colors behind her because I'm like, I'm not drawing a room. Who draws rooms? Squares draw rooms. That's terrible. So yeah, so it's similar, but it's exciting because I don't think the ideas were bad. I think it was just I didn't have the skill, and so it's kind of exciting to go back and be like, okay, you were on the right page. You just had more work to do. So
Yeah.
Speaking of drawing girls, these ladies are lovely.
yay! I like drawing girls.
Me too.
They're so fun.
So, you saying what you just said gave me an awesome idea for a prompt for a future episode. I'll pitch it to you after.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so like as a non-artist, one of my favorite things, and I talk about this a lot. One of my favorite things about like illustration is I love character design and world building. And so like right now, this is an original character you're working on, right, Em?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I love seeing somebody create and then like seeing how they use their visual language to convey a concept, like some background or even just like personality. And it's like one of the most thrilling things about like our current era where like illustration is at such like a crazy high. Like there are so many things that are world building and character driven, and you're seeing such incredible like effort and talent be displayed to just develop new worlds or to also to just return to stuff. Like there's been so many reboots. People complain about reboots, but like some of these reboots have been really creative and incredible.
Oh yeah.
And like Voltron. Yep. Yeah, spoiler, M's recording with Nicole and I tomorrow for Crash Test, and we're going to be covering Agretsuko, but her almost audible was the Voltron reboot. And I love the Voltron reboot because it is different, but it is like the pedigree is still there, like the inspiration is still there.
Yeah.
But the new characters are so inventive and so creative. And I felt the same way about She-Ra. You take these old, 30-year-old characters and then you just make them new and exciting. And it's just like, it's also one of the reasons why like Naruto is one of my favorite things. Bleach is one of my favorite things. I just love like the individual creators behind those two shows, like, well, the mangas really, they just designed like groups upon groups of like, these are all these characters that share like an organization together or something like that. So they have a shared aesthetic, but they each demonstrate their individual personalities and their backgrounds in their design. And it's so inventive. I guess like that kind of, at least in anime, that stems all the way back to like the magical girl aesthetic, right? Like they each showed their personality in, it's like one of my favorite things to see.
So to that point specifically, and I'm so happy, again, it's always fun. I like hearing the way you word things, Paul, because it kind of gets my brain going and it helps me to formulate like, okay, what is it that I like about this, and this? And I'm realizing now, as someone who has always enjoyed creating characters and being inspired to create characters and build worlds, I enjoy the thought process of it now more than I ever did as a kid. And that is, I don't know, again, if that's just because I can now sit back and think like, okay, so what would influence this? What would influence her clothing or her setting, or how would then she interact in this world? Whereas before it was just like, I want to design cool stuff. And that was all the motivation that I needed. And then I would build the world to fit that. Whereas now I'm like, how do they have a symbiotic relationship and how do they work? And then how would this influence that? So the actual like process of it is so much more enjoyable to me now than it might have been. Like the goal as a kid was always the end. Like I want to get to this cool character being done so that I could do more with this cool character. Where I guess, oh God, I'm really getting old now. So I'm like, now I enjoy the journey of it more. But yeah, it's fine. I'll die soon. It's good. All right, it's fine.
I'm so excited that you're realizing you're an English teacher now. A high school English teacher.
Oh, and I'm so happy I was able to go back and tell my high school art teachers this in person because it was the biggest like, nope, you were right, my bad. So all through high school, it was always art. I knew I wanted to do art with my life. That was not a secret. But my high school art teachers was like, you really should look into possibly considering either an education minor or something about that because, you're a really good teacher. And I'm just like, that's funny. I'm not. And I hate teaching. Why would I ever do teaching? And so then literally, for any of you who know me, I teach now. I teach often and I really like it. And so as I was getting into that and having that realization, I went back to my two high school teachers and be like, okay, so I'm 10 years late to this, but you understood me better than I could have ever understood myself at 16. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. So yeah. Self-reflection, man. Also, what up, Ace of the Jungle? Thanks for joining. Yeah. I don't even know who I am anymore.
It's funny how stuff like that will sneak up on you. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, and it's as we've talked through stuff like that, like as you talk through something and you all of a sudden like start to put the pieces together and realize it, and you're just like, oh dang. Like that, it's such a weird, like it's a good feeling, but it's a weird feeling. You're just like, oh, okay, all right.
For me, like when I was a kid, I remember my neighbor across the road would come over and we'd hang out and we would tape the radio. And I had a double tape boombox. And so we would then take our tape of the radio and we would record our own like, DJ segments.
Oh.
And so like we'd play a song and then do it like it's this whole thing. And I kind of like when I was young, like maybe like 10 to 12 or so, I was like, it would be really cool to be a DJ. And by the time I became an adult, like DJs were few and far between and weren't as important as they once were. But, over the next decade or so, podcasting would become a thing. And all of a sudden, a few years after it really hit the mainstream, I fell into an opportunity to become a podcaster. And my childhood dream that I had like put on the shelf and completely forgotten about suddenly became a reality for me almost overnight. And just like it, suddenly I'm tapping into something that is so fulfilling and it's something that I wanted and didn't realize. And then it was there,
Oh.
Yep. I love that.
So it's crazy how like you repress stuff and then it reemerges later, and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, this is something that you're really comfortable doing and you're really good at it, and or at least you're happy doing it. I don't know. Yep. I bag on myself all the time about the quality of my content, but I have a good support group who provides a lot of positive feedback.
I think the big thing with that too is, and it's something I try and tell a lot of my students, because it's one of those where I was like, nope, as much as, there's so many things where I'm like, I wish I could tell you this, but you literally just have to experience it because you're not going to get it just by me saying it. Mm-hmm. But the big thing is, I was like, if you're enjoying doing it, that will translate to people more than anything else. Like
Mhm.
your genuine excitement and enthusiasm will resonate with people, even if the actual physical medium, source material, any of that, even if that's not their thing, your enthusiasm for it will win people over more than you think. So it's okay. Like it's okay to have that. You're allowed to be excited about this thing because that is exciting to other people.
Yeah, that was even true in my background in like sales. When I worked in electronic sales, if somebody came in for a scanner, I was like, oh, okay, it's got 100 channels, and you'll be able to listen to EMS. Yes, yes. If you get this antenna, and I never really learned like more than the basics about it because I just didn't care about it at all, and I thought these people were wasting their time and being too nosy. But then if somebody came in and they were into like cell phones or like a game console or something like that, I'd be like, oh, by the way, blah blah blah, you can get this, and then you can get this accessory to charge your controllers, and oh, by the way, did you hear about this latest game? And like it's your ability to like just come across changes completely if you're excited about the material, whether it's like teaching or speaking or selling. It just whenever I had customers who were into something that I was into even a little bit, it was just so much better and so much easier to do my job.
Yeah.
And I actually used to derive joy from like finding people the right thing for what they needed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was never big on like hitting like sales quotas and all that stuff. Like I wasn't the guy who piled like 15 accessories on your cell phone. It was like, you need to have all of these. I'd be like, tell me exactly how you intend to use this, and I would find you exactly what was good for you. And I took pride in that, like that you would walk out with something that you'd be really happy about and hopefully wouldn't bring back the next day.
Yeah.
But it's night and day. Like,
Yep. No, and it's one of those where I try to make a point that if I have a salesperson like that now, because a lot of people aren't like that, like, I'm like, is there a way I could speak to your manager and tell them how great you are? Like, it's not a bad thing. I was like, I want to compliment you because it makes a difference. And especially if you are a customer going in to a place where you don't know a lot about what you're asking, it can be so intimidating and it can be really hard to be vulnerable in not knowing. And so to have someone who doesn't make you feel bad for that, but is just like, I have all of this knowledge that I cannot wait to literally like unload the dump truck onto you of like, here, have all of it. Have all of it.
yeah. And the best salespeople are the people that will come up to you and like, can I help you? Blah, blah, blah. And like, they will take your answer and then, have a sixth sense for like knowing when to circle back around to you and be like, all right, so you look like you have some questions, but
Yep.
not make you feel pressured, because I hated doing that. And I hate people who do that to me. Like if I walk into a store and somebody's like trying to be really pushy with me, I'm like, dude, I've done this gig. I know exactly what you're doing and I'm immune to it. Please go away.
You become
Yeah.
Ron Swanson. I know more
Yep.
than you.
I know more than you.
Oh, I agree completely. Also, I really want to call out what Hebe said in chat. The past few years has been me pulling up a lot of old interest I buried and wanting to start excelling at them again. And yeah. Oh, yay! And podcasting.
Yeah, podcast. Everybody who wants to should podcast. I'm not suggesting people who don't want to should.
And if you don't want to do it, then listen to them because there's a lot of really cool stuff over there.
Well, this is I'm going to get in trouble for calling her out, but this is the struggle I have with Nicole all the time, where she's always like, well, I don't know anything about this thing and I don't know what to say. And I'm like, that's not the point. Like, your perspective is always valid. And there's somebody out there who's like, I also didn't get that thing that you guys are talking about. And I totally relate to your perspective. And that's okay. Like, it's because she tends to clam up on us on Crash Test when we're covering something that just wasn't in her wheelhouse. And she's glaring.
You're fine.
Nope. Yeah, it's a weird thing, and especially as you were talking about podcasting specifically, Paul, and your kind of path to it, like that type of talking was never something that I really, really wanted to do. So it took me a few extra steps to get to the, I don't always know what to say, but even just saying what I'm thinking is valid. Like that was a weird thing. I was like, well, I'm not an expert on this topic. I can't talk about it. And, then take a step back and be like, well, no, clearly that doesn't stop a lot of people, so it shouldn't stop you. But figuring out a way to be comfortable in working through my ideas live was a weird thing. So, yeah.
So
Now I'm just like, hey, let's draw live. Why not?
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Like, very few people are truly an expert on something, right? And even less of those people are an expert on more than one thing. And even people who are an expert on something can lose the plot. The classic example I always like to throw to is like movie critics. Have you ever read so a popular movie comes out? I'm trying to think of like a recent example. I don't know. All right. Well, Venom, the first Venom movie came out, right? And the critics just absolutely jumped all over it. They're like, this is garbage. This is absolutely terrible. This is going to do horribly. So on and so forth.
And they were correct.
Except it sold very well. Like movie tickets sold well. A lot of people went out to see it, and the fan reviews on like Rotten Tomatoes and such were much more positive, like to the point of like 30 or 40 base points more positive.
Ow.
And what that says to me is sometimes when you look at something from the perspective of like a film critic, where like your job is to analyze film and be like, all right, what were they really like? What techniques were they using in this scene? What were they really trying to convey? All that kind of stuff. You've lost the plot sometimes when something is basically just made to be entertaining, to not be deep, to not be complex, to just be maybe funny or a little goofy, etc. And that's okay sometimes, and not always. Like there's stuff that is like objectively just bad. Like you can tell. I guess the one I like to point to, like some people like to almost hate watch it, but watch it because it's so bad it's good. But like Batman and Robin,
Yeah.
that movie is excruciatingly awful. But it's it's
and
really
Hebe
fun.
just pointed out in the comments the Resident Evil movies.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the first one was okay, right? Because it was
Yeah.
like a sign of its time. It was pretty
Well, and
decent. They
Again,
tried.
and Mila Jovovich being what she is, which is awesome.
And then it just got worse and worse as they made more of them. And they just had more unintelligible plots. But that's okay sometimes. Last year, Mortal Kombat, the new Mortal Kombat movie came out. And I was like, I don't want it to have a good story because Mortal Kombat cannot have a good story. I want to see Sub-Zero freeze people and shatter them. I want to see Scorpion spear people and say, get over here. I want to see my childhood played out in live action. Like, that's it. That's all I want to see. And I got that. And I was like, I really enjoyed that. More. Take a couple years, more. And it's like, other people were like, oh my God, it was so awful. Like, the plot was incomprehensible. I'm like, yeah, it's Mortal Kombat.
What plot were you looking for? There's not a plot.
Creatures from another plane come to Earth, the mortal realm, to kill people, to win a karate tournament. There's no plot. Like, let's abandon the plot. It's just, yeah, it's, I think sometimes, like, people can really lose sight of the bigger picture. Things don't have to be perfect to be great. And that's
Yeah.
They
okay.
do.
Yes. They do.
Again, that's fine for everybody else except for me.
Yeah.
Well, and I think as you're talking about that specifically with movies, I feel like there is no margin, or even video games or cartoons at this point, there's no margin for them to be subpar. If they don't make their money, then they're not worthy, and therefore you don't get to keep making stuff like that. Like, that kind of bums me out, because sometimes stuff that's not good or not the most fantastic, I was like, it's still fun. It still deserved to be made. Just, but because sales and that part of it drives so much of it, I feel like you don't have as much room to fail. with it, which is a bummer
Yeah.
because I feel like that's almost then kind of you're stifling people from wanting to take really big leaps or be
Mhm.
really inventive, because if you don't appeal to X number of people, then you are branded failure. And
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that's really kind of like putting a pretty big wedge in the video game industry right now, right? Like you have AAA titles are struggling to appeal. It more often than not, a AAA title doesn't do so well,
Mhm.
doesn't meet expectations, and it's because they're expensive. They're gargantuan Leviathan projects. You have literally hundreds of people who are collaborating to program, to design, to do the art, everything, the writing, the voice acting. Like you are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, and trying to do it in like 4 to 5 years at the most. Like that's a long development cycle nowadays,
Mhm.
because it's got to get out, it's got to be on the shelf, it's got to consume, everyone's got to consume, and if it doesn't blow the doors off of sales projections, it's a colossal failure. I think one of the best examples of that, probably in a long time and for a long time, will be Cyberpunk 2077.
Ooh, okay,
that
yeah.
that game is unfinished, I will say that. Just, it's very clear that like they did not get to finish everything they were working on. But there's so much, like, people are like, oh, CD Projekt Red is like, they don't care about us, it was a big con, they're trying to bilk us of our money, all of this stuff. And I'm like, it's clear that that's not the case. Like, you look at like neighborhoods and you see all the detail that went into the art design, you see the cleverness that went into the writing, the character designs. Like, people really cared about what they were doing and were trying to do a great job.
Yeah.
But the investment, the money, was like, this game has to hit shelves this year because we need to see money. We need money back.
Money,
Yeah.
please.
Money, please. If that game had been given another 2 or 3 years to mature, when it came out, it probably would have been one of the best games that was ever made.
Yeah.
But now it came out too soon. It's half baked, literally, and it's going to go down in history as one of the most embarrassing colossal failures of a previously respected developer. And I don't know that they can pull a No Man's Sky and like pull out of the tailspin,
Yeah.
and like repair their reputation and repair the game. I just don't know if it's possible because of how gargantuan the task is. Hebe in chat says AA games basically don't exist anymore. If a AA game is made, it's relegated to mobile platforms. Yeah, and that's, so we have the AAA industry, which is really struggling to succeed, or it's just like the Call of Duties, just kind of rehashing the same thing over and over again. Or we have the indie scene, where the stakes are much smaller. They're usually using limited resources and technology, like they're usually using like downgraded graphics, smaller teams, but all of a sudden that opens up this realm of creativity where it's like, well, I don't have to appeal to 500 million people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to move 500 million units for this game to be successful. I need to move 50,000 units in the first year, and I will be wildly successful, and I will be funded to make my next game. And now you can just suddenly do almost anything.
Yeah.
As long as you've got like an art team that is a little bit clever and a little bit creative, and you have a good core concept that is fun, and if you can tap into what like makes people excited to play something, it's suddenly wildly successful. It's just a very weird situation.
It is. And also, because we have evolved through so many different topics today, but very much, when you come back to Saturday morning cartoons, like now with YouTube and independent broadcasters, you can make the weird cartoons that you really want to see and get them funded on Kickstarter or have a following on Twitch or have that type of stuff. Like, you have an outlet for that now, which is super, super cool, because I feel like then, again, you're not dictated by the money, hopefully, not as much, at least not at the start, and get to make some cool stuff. So, yay! All right, I'm also realizing, like, I talked a whole bunch and did not focus and did not finish my piece, but I got close. I know. But the other two lovely artists kicked total butt and focused and did what they were supposed to do. So, yeah, she's close.
Well, Church Mouse finished her piece.
Also, I am always super impressed because she has to wait for things to dry
Mhm.
and is better at that than I will ever be. And I'm super jealous because I'm just like, can't do it, must touch it, must
So she-
ruin it.
She was done an hour ago and then just expanded her background.
That's true.
I watched it happen. I was like, all right, she's done. And she's expanding her panels. But now it looks so crisp.
It looks so beautiful. Yeah.
Who draws
so
feet?
I don't need no stinking feet. So yeah,
Feet people.
let's go around. That's a whole separate conversation. That might be back for Doodle Crew. But yeah, let's do some show and tell. So Nicole, I'm
Yeah.
gonna make you big. See, do I want this one? Nope, I want this one. Show me. There we go. Yeah. So we didn't actually name it. Do you wanna name it now for those who might not know?
Yeah, so the cartoon, it was a 1961 cartoon called Top Cat. It originally was actually a weekday evening kind of show, but it didn't get popular until it was rebroadcast Saturday morning, so I felt like it was appropriate. Basically, the premise is this yellow cat here, his name is Top Cat because he wears a top hat, and he always gets into trouble, and it's a really weird world they live in because cats and people just kind of coexist. Like they can all talk and they have jobs and it's kind of strange. But the character I kind of focused on is this guy. This is Officer Dibble.
No.
And so because there's only one season, he's only officer. But at one point there's talk of him making sergeant. So I was considering like maybe he would get a promotion in season 2. And
Aw.
so yeah.
That makes me super happy.
Yeah, I got to play around a little with color, so that's fun.
Well, and the colors fit so perfectly. Like they are evoking that time frame of cartoons for me. Like I'm having a big old nostalgia hit with this. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yay! Yeah,
I
had
love the
fun.
rickety fence that you drew too.
Yeah.
yeah.
That texture. Sexy texture. I love it. All right. And if people want to see more of your amazing work, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I think that's all of them at Mayor Squish.
Yay! Awesome. Also head over to her Etsy store where you can buy watercolors from her. Sorry. I just
Yeah.
blew out all the microphones, but yeah. All right. Let me switch back. So Randall, your turn.
My
Show us.
turn.
Yay!
So anybody who joined late and didn't get the initial descriptor, this one's kind of a throwback. Not everybody remembers this cartoon because it's very 90s and then it went away forever. So this is Jesse from The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest. And season 1 to season 2 like is such a big difference. They changed up like the storytelling between the seasons. I don't know if you remember, Emily, like season 2 was very much more like paranormal focused.
So it's funny, like as you were drawing and I saw the colors show up, I was like, oh my gosh, I do remember it. But because I remember like when I would go back and rewatch, I always watched season 2 because I liked it better. Like I think that's why I didn't remember the change because I just didn't go back and rewatch the first season.
Yeah, so it's like in the first season, you know, Jesse is much more like masculine, I guess, because maybe they wanted to ease people into the fact that there was a girl on the team because Johnny Quest didn't have that before in the 60s.
Girls. Yeah, you can't have girls in Johnny Quest. Girls don't like adventure.
Exactly. So they're like, we're going to give her like kind of neutral lips and thick eyebrows, and you know she's very and fighting and you know, and then I mentioned earlier she had green eyes in the first season, but then you come over to season 2 and she's got these like nice pretty blue eyes, and her lips have been changed to more of a pink color, gave her a pink top. She went from being like super fighty and like, yeah, I'm a girl and I can handle my shit, to like the nagging mom kind of like she's always sassing Johnny, and like, yeah, she can still hold her own in season 2. There's no doubt about that. But it's like there's a shift for sure that happened.
Yeah, they leaned into, I think we'll say, a little bit more stereotypes as far as personality, but it's so funny to me because that like purple pink combo is so ingrained in my brain because it was so much of what was available to girls to wear at the time. Like, why did we combine these colors? Why did we do that? Also with the red hair, like full Little Mermaid vibes where you're like, red hair, give her a pink dress. I was like,
Yep.
that's not how color theory works. No.
Yeah, just I mean her season 2 outfit in general is so bizarre. It's like it's kind of like a very long t-shirt, I guess, because she's got it belted. I didn't draw below because, you know, I hate bodies and everything that's not a face. But it's like she's got it belted almost like her original thing where it's like tucked in, but like then she's got shorts on under that.
But also leggings. It was very much like she was wearing like a 3/4 arm and leg unitard underneath with then like a romper over it that was also belted. I don't have any plans to explain what fashion was because I didn't understand it then and I don't understand it now. But yeah, I was like, okay, we made some interesting design choices for what she was wearing.
Yeah. And then Johnny pretty much stayed the same. And Haji, they're like, he was wearing his, you know, his black turtleneck and watch, and that's all you get.
Yes. He was.
Are you cosplaying Johnny right now?
Maybe. I might have the JQ. No, where's that arm?
Yeah.
The JQ logo there. This is from a really old costume I did like 10 years ago, or more than that even.
That makes me happy. So if people want to see, we'll say, more of your costuming or more of your art, where can they find you?
Yeah, so if you follow me over on Instagram, I go by Randy Limoges on there. It's some art, a lot of selfies, thirst traps, because what else are you going to do? But if you strictly want the art and I remember to update it, I do also have a Tumblr, which, funny enough, I do not post pornographic content on that Tumblr. It is only art, get your mind out of the gutter, and that's RW Art over there.
Yay! I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be back. All right, let me jump mine over so you can see my finals. So I went with an original character. I was vibing with the kind of like, we'll say, Pacific skateboard surfer type of thing. Like I said, I just came back from Hawaii, so I'm all about those Hawaiian flowers and fun color combos. So yeah, she was fun. I just wanted to see a little bit of confidence boost between season 1 and season 2. So she took her little like bear hat and now, you know, just has the space buns and is into a crop top more than, you know, the long sleeve. But yeah, had some fun.
She got guns. She wants to show them off in season 2.
Heck yeah. Yeah. So no, it was fun. It was fun. It's one of those I've been very interested in drawing a skateboard character because skateboards are really hard to draw and I thought I'd torture myself. But yeah. If you want to follow more of my stuff, you can follow me across the internet at a swan named Emily and all of that. Special guest, thank you again, Paul. Tell people where they can find you, hear more of your podcasting stuff, all of your fun things that you do.
Hi, I'm Paul Soapbox Klotz. You can find me at Soapbox Klotz on Twitch and Twitter. For the most part, those. Most importantly, my only podcast that's active at the moment is Crash Test Pilots with my lovely partner, Nicole, who's right there. Right.
Yeah.
Where we kind of watch the first episode of television programs almost like a book club. We go in, we watch the first episode, we talk about it as a self-contained thing, and let you know what we thought of it. Like if it was cool, if we would watch more. Spoiler, I like things more often than Nicole does, and we rarely ever watch it more. Or I watch it by myself. But yeah, like please check that out. Emily and I and us are recording tomorrow. And we're going to be doing a Gretzico. She's been on in the past as well, so go check that out too. Yeah. And we also did we're starting a YouTube channel. We have a lovely 40-minute conversation in the tank. I need to do a whole bunch of work to get that ready to put out. So, you know, it's coming. I promise. It's just I have no idea what I'm doing. and I got to figure it out. So stay tuned for that. We'll hit all the socials when that's ready to go live. And yeah, we're basically going to start kind of a companion series on YouTube to go along with the show, and just maybe not be directly tied into the show week to week. Or I don't think we're going to be able to put out a video week to week, but we're going to try to put out several. So stay tuned for all of that. And yeah, this week will be M with us with Agretzko.
Yay! So excited. This is awesome. If you want to see more of Doodle Crew stuff across the internet, we are at Doodle Crew Draw all over the place. It's super fun. We are so happy to be back. Thank you everyone for hanging out with us. I know we took a kind of a long vacation, but I appreciate it because I couldn't handle this well. Other things were going on. So we're super happy to be back. We are hitting October really, really hard. So if you're with us in chat right now, we have 4 more episodes planned in October. I know we didn't talk about Inktober a whole bunch today. That was purposeful on my part because I was already stressed. So, but later on, we will be talking about different drawing prompts and super fun stuff. As always, if you want to suggest prompts to us, or if you know artists who might want to come and guest with us, have them hit me up. Have them contact us at Doodle Crew Draw. And we'd love to have new people and do new things. So look for more fun stuff this new season. And yeah, thanks everyone. Goodbye.